We're streaming today. We're streaming today. What can I say? But we're streaming today. Let's look at the news. I hope it doesn't make you blue. We're streaming. We're streaming today. Hey Vince, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. You popped in right away. Look at you. You're like, were you sitting there with your finger on the button, just ready to go? Glad to see you, bud. Glad you're here. Not gonna lie, today is going to be a depression stream. Nothing to be done about it. Sorry if the stream is a bit choppy. My daily upload is just finishing right now, so I suspect the stream will be a bit choppy for the first 15-20 minutes. Depression, yeah, depression. Let's be upfront and honest about it. Like, there's no reason. Yay! Yay! Yeah, exactly, a depression stream. I'm depressed learning about Mike Harris and the Common Sense Revolution. Man, oh man, I can't believe people voted this guy in. Yeah, Mike Harris is widely a disaster for Ontario. I'm yet to see anyone form any argument for why Mike Harris is valid. What Mike Harris brought to the table. What did he achieve? Who did he help? What's his legacy? Right. Well, Vince, I think the only hope that we have at this stage is that we're talking about it. Like, things are happening. Like, today's video was very much pointing out that, like, haven't you noticed that your whole life has been filled with just proving to old delusional white men that things exist? Have you noticed this? Have you noticed that life has just been a constant thrum of being like, no, depression exists. No, homosexuality exists. No, climate change exists. Like, have you noticed that we're constantly in this consistent struggle to convince old white men that reality exists, and that the stories they told themselves, like there's a wizard coming back at any moment, better be good and get ready, like that doesn't exist? That in many ways the millennial experience is just clarifying what is or is not reality. And there is kind of a hope there, because we have convinced them to a degree. Like, you would be hard-pressed, I think, to find someone who wasn't suffering from some kind of massive delusional mental illness. You would be hard-pressed to find someone who doesn't think that depression has some kind of existence or is some kind of force. Homosexuality has been widely accepted through our society. And of course, there's always that 20-30% of conservative voters, right, who will absolutely just go to their grave believing that gay people are of the devil, or and depression is just like people making an excuse. Oh, these people are just being lazy, like that kind of thing. Of course, that's why they vote conservative, right? So, but the wider public has actually acknowledged that these things are real. And so within the space of our lifetimes, yeah, within the space of our lifetimes, we have seen improvement. We have seen changes. The major concern that I have at this stage in the game is that there is one issue that we are not moving forward fast enough, and if it follows the logic of convincing these old white men, then we are going to get completely ramrodded, because these old white men are only changing their tune once the evidence becomes so overwhelming and the public majority has turned so drastically against them that it's no longer tenable to maintain the position. Hey Ruth, how you doing? Thanks for popping in. Always good to see you, Ruth. And if the climate change conversation continues along those lines, where we need to have overwhelming evidence and the public needs to have turned completely against them, well, then we may very well be doomed.
Scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, and the Scripps Institution of Oceanography recently announced that the level of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere reached the highest level ever directly recorded since modern observations began 63 years ago. Every year, the level of carbon dioxide reaches a peak in May, and this year it measured a monthly average of 419 parts per million. The scientists say that translates to roughly 40 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide pollution being dug up out of the earth, burned, and released into the atmosphere every year. They say that in order to avoid catastrophic climate change, our highest priority must be to reduce that number to zero as soon as possible. They also say that the levels they just recorded were not only just the highest they've seen in years, but they were also about the same levels that the planet saw in the Pliocene climatic optimum era, which occurred between 4.1 million and 4.5 million years ago. At that time, the average temperature of the planet was about 7 degrees Fahrenheit higher than pre-industrial times. So it was a lot hotter back then. And not only that, but sea level at the time was about 78 feet higher than it is today, which is nuts, because even just 10 feet of sea level rise would submerge a lot of our coasts. It's hard to imagine what seas being 80 feet higher would make the planet look like, or an extra 7 degrees. It was a much different planet back then in the Pliocene climatic optimum era, all those millions of years ago, and yet right now on the planet we have the same amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. The scientists say all this points to one thing: we gotta slow down! They saw a nice decline in carbon dioxide emissions during the pandemic, but they are already going right back up again as the world grinds back into gear. But they also had a little bit of good news, that in 2019, before the pandemic, we did manage to flatten the curve of emissions on our own. So there is hope for us to figure things out through renewable energies and whatnot. Personally, I hope we're able to figure out some good carbon capture technology to just vacuum it all up out of the sky so that we can continue to survive right here in our beautiful garden and live the way we want. Otherwise, we're going to have to shoot as much stuff as we can up to Mars, and then the rest of us need to burrow into the planet to avoid all the catastrophic storms like the people of Venus did, and the whole thing just happens again. Earth becomes Venus, Mars becomes Earth, yada, yada, yada. Carbon capture technology, folks. We need to get on it like our lives depend on it. Because they do.
This was sent to me by one of my Patreons, so I thought I would show it on the stream. It's pretty concise, pretty good, gets my views nicely packaged. Thank you for the virtual hug, Ruth. I do definitely need it today. I definitely need it today. Today's a rough day. Today's a rough day, and getting through it. That's good. And you know, and like on my own personal level, like on in my own personal life, like once I step out of the meta, things are actually going really well. The channel is growing. I'm getting new Patreons, right? People are donating, which if you're listening and you haven't donated to the Patreon, links in the description. And so things are happening. Like it hasn't grinded to a halt, and it's not in decline or anything. So that's good. You know, it's just I get so caught in the meta, in the larger issues, and it's because that's where I have to spend all my time, because I look out into the news, and I look out into the world, and I look out into what I'm seeing, and I'm just not seeing, like, I'm not seeing anyone report on the news and report on what is happening in a way that I consider to be satisfactory. And it's that kind of classic, like, you know, if you want a job done, you've got to do it yourself kind of thing. And so here I am doing what I think needs to be done. But it's, if anybody ever tells me that what I'm doing is not a job, like, I love it when these guys come in and they tell me to get a job. I'm like, go fuck yourself. Like, my job is harder than your job by a lot. By a fucking lot. By a lot. Like, what are you? You're like a plumber? Yeah, good for you. You go turn that wrench. Do your good work. Like, it's good work. It's fine. But, like... Oh, I've got some beautiful comments here. Did you see the latest USA bipartisan infrastructure deal? They're going about it in a totally backwards way that looks good to public perception, but they do more harm than good, reversing past good. Well, first of all, how you doing, Silverlight? I apologize if you've been in the chat before and I don't remember you, because I do have memory loss issues. But thanks for being here. Yeah, the infrastructure deal, like, it looks good from public perception because it's like, oh, finally, the United States is actually doing something. Like, it's actually building infrastructure. Like, when was the last time the United States actually spent money on infrastructure, right? Like, forever ago. Like, they rarely do this. And if they do pass infrastructure legislation, it's like once per president kind of a thing. Oh, well, that's perfect. Welcome aboard. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. I always like talking to... New people are always the most exuberant, because they're just like, oh, yay, we get to talk about this, and it isn't going to be stupid capitalist nonsense. Yay! But like, really, when you think about the structure of how capitalism works, any infrastructure deal that comes through the Congress or comes through the halls of power in the United States is not going to really work. And even if it does work, well, the structure, like, okay, opening a map. I don't really want to sing the Google Map song, but I've committed to the bit, and I'm gonna do it. Let's open the map. That's actually quite fun. That's actually quite fun to do. Okay, let's take, like, Texas. Texas is a perfect example. Texas, obviously the electrical power grid that exists in Texas is in trouble, right? 2 years running now, they've had significant issues with their grid. This indicates that their grid is in need of repair, or is in need to be yeah, Stairs in Canada Infrastructure Bank. Exactly, Justin. How you doing, bud? Good to see you. And so the Texas power grid, right? Like the Texas power grid needs to be repaired. They need to go through and do it. But the thing is that the power grid is privatized, right? It's owned by, like, a cabal, right, of people who essentially organize themselves into a council so that they can communicate with one another and create arrangements with one another. But there's no, like, real state oversight, and there's certainly no federal oversight. So essentially what this infrastructure spending is doing is it's taking money from who? Well, the taxpayers, right? Not the billionaires. Billionaires don't pay taxes, right? So it's taking money from working Americans, right? Giving it to private interests so that the private interests can fix their power lines, which wasn't the whole grift that they would be doing that anyway, right? Wasn't the whole grift about the neoliberal trickle-down economics thing that they would do that anyway? But no, they don't do that. They take their profits and they offshore it, right? So they privatize gains, and then, oh, we have to fix some stuff. We've got to fix our infrastructure. Well, then we subsidize the losses, right? We go to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden passes an infrastructure bill, right? And so, and this is how neoliberal capitalism works to the degree that it works, is that we get to privatize public infrastructure that the public needs and requires and relies on. So we get to be the private owners of that, and so we privatize all of those gains. But when it comes time to actually spend money to actually keep the system going and to improve it, well, we subsidize that. And who's paying for that? Taxpayers. So even in its like best case, right? Even in its best case. So the government comes in, spends a whole bunch of money, fixes up all these power lines so everything's good and all that kind of stuff. So I'm the one that's paying for that, right? And then I turn around and continue paying the private owners of these lines. So I'm getting double billed, basically, while these guys just walk away with the money, right? While incidentally doing absolutely no work, not even really being involved in the business that they run, right? Because like once you have like a multi-billion-dollar business, you don't really need to be involved in it, right? You just hire somebody to do that. And this eventually collapses because eventually, like, you continue doing this, and eventually the public who are taking the burden of all of this billing and all of these parasites, eventually they no longer have the money to be able to pay, right? Because you're just siphoning everything away from them, and there's no balance in the conversation. So these and this is how it's all going to work. It's going to work for roads. It's going to work for tunnels, transit, all of that. That's the narrative across the board in America, and it fails. It completely fails, right? The meta is where it's at. News is all fabricated. Any hot issues are distraction meant to divide and conquer. Yeah, I'd say that's largely true. I don't know, like, the news is fabricated. Like, this is the interesting thing to point out about the news media. And even the billionaires are pretty aware of this, which is that when you're reporting, you do largely have to report on domestically. Domestically, you have to report the truth, right? But you can report the truth on, like, page 56, column A, B, and bury it down in the bowels of the culture, right? You don't need to make it front page news. In terms of foreign reporting, I definitely agree with what you're saying here. Like, foreign reporting is definitely all bullshit. I don't pay any attention to our domestic news media when it comes to reporting on what's going on in other nations, because it's so overt bullshit. Like, it's in some cases, like, literally taking direct statements from the CIA and just publishing them, right? Like, what's the phrase that gets used? We are the news media is stenographers for the state, that kind of thing, which I think when it comes to foreign issues is absolutely the truth. Domestically, though, they know they've got to report the truth because they know that there's enough domestic force, people, assholes like me, or Canada Land, right? Like, or the Jacobin, that will stand up and will be like, no, this is bullshit, this is a lie, right? And some of these news organizations are already on the like, I think the National Post is right on the edge. Like, I think they're right on the edge, and I think they know that they're right on the edge of the culture. I think that the culture is really poised to be. To say to the National Post, you are no longer a credible outlet. Like, you get to go in the bin with the Sun, right? And I mean, if you're reading the Sun and you're taking the Sun seriously, like, you're lost. Like, I don't think there is a path back for you if you're reading the Sun and being like, this is good journalism. And if the National Post gets that reputation and ends up in that place, it's very hard to come back. It's very hard to come back once you lose the faith of the populace. And if they keep publishing people like Rex Murphy, like they keep publishing these guys, like, that's exactly what's going to happen to them. So they've got to make some pretty hard decisions. I would prefer if the National Post didn't end up in the dustbin. I think more news media is better. It's good to have multiple sources hashing things out. which is why I've always been against this idea of like defunding the CBC. I'm like, what are you, stupid? Like, defund the CBC? No, you want a state-funded news media apparatus. You want that. Because even if it is just the state saying what the state is saying and the stenographers writing it down and sending it in, even if that's what it is, at least it's a completely different perspective. At least it's something different. And if the National Post and the Globe and Mail want to counter it and want to create alternative narratives, or at least have, like, well, isn't that a nice nuanced conversation then? We're getting many different perspectives. So people who are standing up and saying, like, we should defund the CBC, I think those people are fucking nuts. Like, really think about what it is you're arguing for. And really what you're arguing for is the secession of news media to corporate oligarchs. Like, no thanks. Oh, lots of commentary. Oh, a building in Florida collapsed. That kind of stuff is going to keep happening, right? Florida is high risk for climate change, right? Climate change, all this light green that you're seeing here, all of this light green is low-lying territory, right? Like it's low-lying land, and all of it, should climate change continue, is going to be underwater. So like literally the water line is going to come up here. Florida is going to cease to exist. Orlando, Tampa, and Miami are going to be underwater, right? Like, and not to speak of like huge sections of this coast as well, and like over here and all this. Like, and this is if the water levels rise only 10 feet, and the water and the water levels are rising. And what's hilarious, like I've seen documentaries coming out of Miami where construction workers are like building buildings on the coast, and they're outright saying like, yeah, in 20 years, like these buildings are not going to be livable. Like they're going to be underwater. They know it, right? They know it. And so, so all of this is just in high level risk for climate change disruption and all this kind of stuff. So it's not shocking to me to hear that like a building in Florida collapsed. It's like, yeah, the foundation and the infrastructure is no longer able to be maintained. Right? You're going to see a lot more of that. And then there's like, we really just need like an event, right? Like just like, it's very easy for me to believe that there's going to be some kind of like hurricane or some kind of big storm that occurs, and the result of that will be this rising wave. And then maybe these old white men will start to wake up and realize, like, oh, climate change is a serious issue. Oh, jeez. You know, I really do genuinely think it's going to take the level of destruction that was wrought in World War II for some of these guys to actually wake up and go like, oh, yeah, this is a serious national security issue, you know? We got to do something about this climate change thing. Yeah. It's going to take, like, we're going to need to start seeing facts and figures like the amount of property damage that happened after this storm was higher than the bombing of Berlin. Like that kind of, those kind of statements are going to have to start being made. Like the amount of destruction that happened after this storm was worse than the German bombing campaigns of London. Like that kind of like old World War II, Cold War sort of comparisons. That's what it's going to take for these delusional, out of touch old white men to start actually saying like, oh, maybe climate change is something that we need to pay attention to, while the rest of us are like pulling our hair out. Yeah, the Canada Infrastructure Bank is just a disaster for us. I actually don't think the Canada Infrastructure Bank survives. Like this is something I actually think is just going to be true. Like I don't think the Canada Infrastructure Bank survives a change in government because it's not very popular. Like even the newsmakers, like the Globe and Mail and the National Post, when they do talk about the Canada Infrastructure Bank, like they're pretty aware. Like they're pretty aware that it's a terrible institution, that it is a failure on the face of it. Like they know. So yeah, after talking about infrastructure as well as the bridge in DC, well, yeah, no, like shit's just gonna like start falling over, right? Like just forget about climate change destroying stuff. Like shit just falls over, right? Gets old if you don't maintain it, and if you privatize these things, well, they have no incentive to maintain. Like, if I own a private bridge that has a toll on it, right, I have no incentive to actually maintain this thing. And I know that when it starts to fall over, they'll just come in with a subsidy, right? I know that's true. So why would I ever spend a penny I'll just go, hang out in Florida while I can, drinking Thai martinis and shit, and getting free money from this toll booth that I've put here. Some poor sap sitting at a toll booth, like wasting his whole life just sort of staring at nothing. Pay him what, $7.50 an hour in the United States? Hi Ocean, how you doing? Good to see you. The ideas of Milton Friedman still haunt the world today. Yeah, he's one of the people I blame for... Well, and you should blame him for neoliberalism, because he's like the father of neoliberalism. He was the father of neoliberal propaganda. He was, and he was Pinochet's head... he was Pinochet's head economist, right? That when Pinochet came into power in Chile, and they started really enacting neoliberal policies in Chile... Milton Friedman was the guy. What's the name of this? Oh my goodness, Naomi Klein. Naomi Klein in Disaster Capitalism really goes through this and really goes through the history of the Chicago Boys. The Chicago Boys being Milton Friedman's crew, and really like sifts through and talks about who Milton Friedman was, what his policies did in Chile, and then what they've done for the rest of the world. And I agree with you, like Milton Friedman. And what's interesting about Milton Friedman is, like, I think he genuinely believed what he was saying, right? I think he was simultaneously bribed by wealthy people in order to spread this propaganda, but I also do think in some measure he genuinely believed what he was saying, because, like, Milton Friedman also wanted to see a basic income, for example, right? Like I think he had big economic ideas. The trouble with Milton Friedman is that he's an economist, not a psychologist or even a humanist, right? He has no, like, he imagines himself. He imposes his own idea of what a human is onto the mass of humanity, instead of actually observing what it is humans actually do, right? And his argument of, if somebody has a whole lot of money, they're going to turn around and reinvest it in their businesses, reinvest it in this kind of stuff. Total bullshit. And, like, falls apart with, like, even the most basic observation of humanity. That if you give a person a whole lot of money, they're going to take that money and they're going to offshore it, and then they're going to use it as leverage against the society, which we see constantly, right? That the billionaire class threatens abandonment constantly. We'll raise taxes and we can fix our infrastructure. Well, if you do that, I'll leave, right? They're outright about this. They're explicit. And because they have all of this wealth, and because there's been this sort of governmental coup that's occurred, and the erection of this corporate state, we have, like, this kind of class of citizenry that are supranational. They exist outside of the nation state system, and for some reason we have to pay attention to them instead of just removing them, admitting that Milton Friedman ended up being a kind of a clueless old man who didn't understand that if you pool wealth underneath a single person, that person becomes the most dangerous person in the society just by the nature of the system, right? Because if you have $1 billion, you're going to reconfigure the society to benefit you. And everyone around you is going to reconfigure themselves in order to pay fealty to you. Why? Because you have $1 billion, right? And so you can literally just, like, cleanse the land of anything that you as an individual see as a problem. And it doesn't matter if you're this, like, beautiful, altruistic, wonderful person, right? You're going to push someone out. You're going to cause a lot of problems for some type of person simply by the course of how it is you exist as a person. that you are a single, small, tiny little person who is looking out of your eyes at the world, and that's the information you get. There's absolutely no way that you can predict the needs of everybody around you. It's impossible. And if you've hoarded all of the resources underneath you, well, you're going to, by the course of how nature works, exclude people and cause suffering simply by the fact that you exist. So billionaires are extremely dangerous structurally, and it doesn't matter how good the person is, right? It's just and that to me is the flaw of Milton Friedman, that you can accept a lot of the stuff he says, but this idea that we should allow infinite wealth to pile underneath a single individual, you gotta just kind of not understand how humans are or their place in the world, right? You genuinely have to believe that a human being is like a god to think that something like this is going to work out. Everything seems designed to fleece general population for the people who already have billions or trillions. I've been diving deep into Wall Street and financial markets. It's all bad. Yeah, but Silverlight, that's exactly what it is. You can, and they're explicit. Like, they're explicit. Go take a look at the statements made by Alan Greenspan, right? Go take a look at the statements made by Alan Greenspan in front of Congress in like the 1990s. He was explicit that the role of the economy should be to make the lives of the populace worse, right? To make workers destabilized and uncertain and scared, right? And so it's explicit. Like, it's built into the system. That's how the system works. You're supposed to be destabilized. You're supposed to be scared. That's the system functioning properly, explicitly stated by the former chairman of the Federal Reserve System, Alan Greenspan, right? And they've never recanted from this. They've never pulled back from this. This is how the system operates. It's supposed to cause you problems. It's supposed to make you homeless. It's supposed to threaten you with these things. That's how the system works. And just because you don't like it doesn't mean anything to them, right? Like, they're billionaires and you're not. Go get fucked. Very simple. Double billed. Yeah, when I was in Germany, I got billed by the doctor per vitamin. Wow. And then the same from the lab. Oh, that's a weird story. I thought that Germany had a... Although I suppose as a Canadian citizen, it's different. But wouldn't our healthcare system cover you? Although I don't know where you are. No, I do know where you are. You're in British Columbia, aren't you, Justin? So wouldn't that bill just kind of transfer to Canada? Anyway. What news sources would you recommend for foreign news? What a wonderful question. Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is my primary. It's my go-to, for sure. They do a very, very good job of reporting on international news. I also think that the Gray Zone is a really, really good, especially counter-CIA organization. Their position is in full agreement with The Hague, which is that the United States is a terrorist organization in the world stage. Reminding everybody that The Hague is the organization that where they put the Nazis on trial after World War II, and this organization has come out and said, I believe in 2018, has said that the United States is a terrorist organization and the CIA is a terrorist organization. And so the Gray Zone has taken that and been like, oh, okay, so the United States is a terrorist organization, and so let's report on it that way. And Max Blumenthal is a prolific writer, really excellent. He writes The Management of Savagery, which is a really good book. I recommend everybody read it. Aaron Mate, award-winning journalist, same story. You can see Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal on Jimmy Dore's show a lot. Jimmy Dore really gives them a platform to be able to speak to a wider audience, which is why I think Jimmy Dore gets attacked a lot by everybody. including leftists, which I think that's part of the strategy, right? It's part of the strategy to try and make sure that people don't pay attention to Aaron Mate, Ben Norton, Max Blumenthal, right? Like, also, I do think that Ben Norton is the Moderate Rebels. If you go to YouTube and you look up the Moderate Rebels, Ben Norton does really, really, really good work. But yeah, I'd say that those are good starting sources for foreign news media and foreign sources. And of course, Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges does On Contact. Chris Hedges does really, really good work. Even Redacted Tonight. Even though I think that I wish that the fellow that does Redacted Tonight would sort of drop the comedy shtick. He's not actually a very good comedian, but he's an extremely good reporter. But he's from like the comedy scene, and so he's got that kind of like fast and loose, rough and tumble way of kind of talking that when he drops it and he just kind of focuses on being a journalist, he's much more convincing and much stronger. But, you know, we're all people. We're all trying to make it through. So those are some good sources that I would highly recommend to just sort of try and figure out what the fuck is going on in the world. Yeah, like how U.S. government-funded media fueled a violent coup in Nicaragua, right? Like, real straightforward. Real straightforward stuff, right? I've learned that hedge funds, like Citadel, own much of the mainstream media. Yep. You can see insane bias in what they buy, sell, or what they talk about and what they don't. Well, and also, dude, like, it gets deeper. It gets even deeper than this. So sure, the hedge funds, like Citadel, own much of the mainstream media, but then when you actually look at who owns the hedge funds, right? Who owns the, like, because it's a layering, right? It's a constant layering. You find that organizations like, I believe they're Vanguard and BlackRock, own large percentages, 20 to 30%, of all of the hedge funds, right? And that all of these corporations and all of these medias are largely owned by these larger institutions, like Blackguard or Vanguard, and that Blackguard and Vanguard themselves own large pieces of each other, right? And so then you break in and you find, okay, well, who are the shareholders for this organization? And you find out it's about 10 people, right? And it's this like incestuous constant, like we own these organizations, which own these organizations, which own these organizations, which own these organizations, right? Like, and it goes down that way. And so, yeah, like, we have owners. Like, it's very clear that we do. Well, I shouldn't say that. It isn't very clear. They work very, very hard to obfuscate what's going on, right? You create a shell company of a shell company of a shell company, right? It makes it very, very, very difficult. Because that exists because we've permitted it, right? That exists because we've permitted it. And we could collapse that system. It wouldn't take that long. But it would require actually confronting capital, which we're not going to do that. Yeah, people are starting to pick up on it all. It's all about centers on meme stocks and hedge funds shorting the economy. Well, and it's getting like, it is getting obvious. Like, it's getting like really, really, like, even in non-specific ways, right? Like, it's you can say, like, yeah, like a small cabal of billionaires own this place, and everyone will kind of be like, yeah, that's just generally true. Like, they don't understand the mechanisms necessarily. But, like, when I talk to my lawyer buddies, they're like, yeah, like, 15 years ago, 5% of my cases were dealing with corporations and billionaires. And now every case I deal with billionaires and corporations, right? Like, that small scale businesses just do not exist anymore. They're just out of the discourse. And all that's left is negotiating with, like, it's essentially like 3 billionaires negotiating with each other. The BBC is world-renowned and respected. CBC could be the same. Be more skeptical of the BBC. The BBC kind of has the same complaint that I've got with our own media, which is that domestically they do good work. And the BBC does really good work in NATO, right? So NATO, let's just be explicit because I find this is helpful. So NATO, boink. Here. All the dark blue that you see here is NATO, right? They have classifications for Russia and classifications for other things, but really this is NATO, the North American Treaty Organization, right? It was a post-World War II alliance. Was it post-World War II or during World War II? Anyway, it was an alliance between Westerners, essentially, a military alliance, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, right? And the BBC does really, really good work reporting internally in NATO, right? That what the BBC says about NATO and itself, largely, I think you could look at it and be like, yeah, okay. When it starts talking about anything outside of NATO, I would put your high skepticism on, be very, very skeptical of what comes out of the BBC outside of these NATO countries. Because, the BBC has to report accurately on what's going on with the Allies and even getting into Russia to a certain degree, I think. It has to report on this because everybody has their own news media, right? And so everybody can kind of talk and there can be a verification. And if you're way outside the norm, people will notice and they'll point it out, right? And that by itself really forces you back to the norm. But like if you're talking about, like if you're the BBC and you're talking about like, I don't know, Argentina, China, right? China would be the big one. There's no counterbalance. There's nobody who can stand up or who is even willing really to stand up and be like, excuse me, that sounds like bullshit to me, right? And of course the Chinese do it, right? The Chinese come out with their own information and their own facts and figures, but you can just sort of discard those as being like, oh, that's just, that's propaganda coming out of their kind of thing. So you end up with two organizations that are kind of talking past each other, each one saying of the other, oh, it's just propaganda. It's just propaganda. And in many cases, both are accurate. It is propaganda, right? But, both are trying to position themselves to be the leaders of this place for some reason. I'm yet to fully understand this desire for domination that exists in kind of the heart of empires and warlords, as if it's something we would want to do. Like that's what gets me the most. It's like, why would anyone ever want to try to take over the world? It seems like such heartbreaking pursuit. Like, anyway, they're talking about a 10 earthquake. What are you talking about there, Ruth? I'd like to look into that. Like, are you talking about something that is going to happen, or is this what happened in Florida? Florida earthquake, building collapse. Oh yeah, okay. This just happened, eh? Not that just this morning. 160 unaccounted for. Machines. Source officials. Yep. Flowers. Yeah. Yeah. No. Not seeing any what were the causes of it. Computers. I hate the news media. It's like when you try to get like a recipe, right? You're trying to get a recipe off the internet, and like you click on apple crumble recipe, and the article starts with when I was a young lad living on the coast of Venice, my father and I would play catch with my dog Rufus. Rufus passed away when I was a boy, but I still think of those days on the Venice beaches where me and my mother would read, and I'm just like, fucking just give me the ingredients, you piece of shit. Scroll down, pop, add, pop, like, just looking for the information here. And so much of news media is like that these days. It's just like padding and storytelling, and it's not even good storytelling most of the time, but look at this. This is the shot. Yeah, this is something significant happened here. Yeah, you're probably right, man. Like that does look like an earthquake. for sure. A 10 though? Wow. What a disaster. That's heartbreaking to see. Rachel Notley is promising net zero by 2050. Like, okay, yeah, this is like, isn't it like saying oh, we'll do net zero by 2050 is a lot like saying, yeah, we'll patch the leak after the boat has sunk, right? Like, it's got that kind of ring to it, where you're like, oh yeah, we'll do net zero by 2050. So we'll patch. I'll tell you what. We'll patch the side of the Titanic after it's at the bottom of the ocean, right? That's fucking helpful. Do I have an opinion about Trevor Tome, economist at the UFC? No. I don't know who Trevor Tome is. I mean, I can form an opinion pretty quickly, because these days there's three really types of economists. There's people who are still defending trickle-down economics, so just like delusional parasites. There are like Keynesian economists, and I would say that somebody like Thomas Piketty, coming out of France, is largely a Keynesian economist. And then you have like Richard Wolff, like your Marxists, right? Which definitely exist. But I don't know anything about. Oh, he's from the University of Calgary, eh? So he's probably, and I don't want to peg him with this because I don't know anything about him. But he's probably like a Fraser Institute type, right? He's probably working papers, like. Let's just see. Trade, migration, productivity, a quantitative analysis of China. Okay. Canadian Tax Journal, Canadian Journal of Economics. Oh, yeah, okay. He's writing a lot about China, which I think is good. I think it's good that economists are getting involved in China and are trying to figure things out. He's got a degree from the University of Toronto. Ah, there it is. Simon Fraser University. Okay, so I can already tell you, because this fellow comes out of Simon Fraser University, that his foundations are rotten, right? Like, if you come from Simon Fraser and you are involved in Simon Fraser, like this guy received his BBA honors finance and economics from Simon Fraser institutions, so that means his foundations are rotten. And so it doesn't matter what he builds on top of it. Right? It doesn't matter that he went to the University of Toronto. It doesn't matter he got his master's. It doesn't matter that he did all this. It doesn't matter that he's writing these articles. It doesn't matter. His foundations are rotten. Because if you're coming out of Simon Fraser, you think trickle-down economics works. And it doesn't. It just, hardline, full stop, doesn't work. And unless he has published an article, or he has made a statement, or he has made it very clear that he understands that trickle-down economics doesn't work, that he understands that the education that he got from Simon Fraser Institute was rotten, then you can basically assume that his conclusions are going to be incorrect, because they're based on this like rotten foundation. Now, I'm saying that, of course, without actually reading anything from him or knowing anything about him, but I can say pretty clearly, like, Simon Fraser University, we should be very skeptical of what this guy says. That's the position that I would take. I would immediately just be like, oh, okay, so you're coming out of Simon Fraser, so I have to be extremely skeptical of everything that you're saying, and I really have to sift, because at some point he's going to confess and admit in his articles that giving wealth to billionaires is good, because they'll turn around and reinvest it in the society, when it's just flatly false. Right? And if you have that kind of core base assumption in the way you think, then everything you do is falsifiable, right? It just doesn't matter what you do, because you have this like fundamental flaw in the way that you think. And that comes out of Simon Fraser University. So that's my opinion of Trevor Tome. Having read nothing, having known nothing about what he has to say, he had the very fact that he's got Simon Fraser in his background sets him pretty far back. It's like a pretty major negative. And again, I could be convinced otherwise, because, I don't know anything about this guy. Oh wow, you guys are really talking to me today. What a good Friday. Oh man, this is nice. This is nice. I like it when the chat is like this more. Ocean, I read Al Jazeera for foreign news. Found a lot of things you wouldn't hear on cable news. Yeah, Al Jazeera. Hey, Carrie, how you doing? Good to see you. Speaking of Jimmy Dore, what is your opinion of Jimmy Dore and the Young Turks fiasco going on? I think Jimmy Dore's got the right of it. That the Young Turks took money, that they are no longer credible, and I think that the populace generally agrees, right? That the Young Turks have experienced a pretty major decline in what's going on, and yeah, it really is just like a testament of like anybody can be bought, right? Anybody can be bought. There is a price tag, and St. Uyghur and the Young Turks, right? They found out what their paycheck was, right? And they got bought. So that's the real lesson. Anybody can be bought, and you should expect it, like you should know when it happens, and so because you don't want to end up being the guy that's like, no, the Young Turks, they always have been good reporters, and they've always been on the right side and all that kind of stuff, and now all of a sudden what's going on? I don't understand. Like and you don't want to be the guy that gets led by the nose by a person who's just been bought. Second thought from YouTube, yeah. Right, BlackRock Vanguard, so many shells. It's the same criminals that, yeah, exactly, that crashed the economy in 2008. Well, and they're going to, like, the crash that's coming now is going to be, like, to the ground, right? Like, and they know they know it's coming because they're the ones that are doing it. So it's going to crash everything to the ground in very significant ways. I was in Germany to do a language course, learned Germany in university, and then went, wow, good for you, bud. They have a public-private system. If you're wealthy enough, you can get private insurance, and you're immediately treated. Yeah. Lots of systems have like a duality, right? That they concede this idea that, okay, sure, everybody should have health care, but like if you want to get fast-tracked and you want to spend the money to be fast-tracked, then we'll let you do that. Yeah, some doctors only accept private insurance, nicer waiting rooms. Yeah. So I wasn't considered a student, so I had to get travel-ins. Oh, you were actually treated better in the healthcare system, so the bills were covered by my insurance. But it was an interesting experience as a Canadian, yeah. Once I accepted as a student, I would automatically get public insurance. Yeah. Hey, Demand Better, how you doing? Hi, Jeff. How you guys doing? Glad to see you guys. Thanks for popping in. Have you seen the hilarious Honest Government? Oh, yeah. Honest Government ads are the best. Honest Government ads are absolutely the best. That crew is just skewering their government, man. I'm really jealous of the content they make and how good it is, right? And I'd love to start producing that kind of stuff myself, but like I feel like it's I feel like the content that I would start making, I want to steal the format that the Screen Rant pitch meeting guy. Do you guys know this pitch meeting guy? I don't want to show his stuff because I don't know if it'll get pinged or something, but like he does basically movies where it's like a writer pitching it to the executive, right? And they talk about the movie and he really like lampoons the whole thing. And that's kind of the format that I'd like to steal and use for politics, because I think it would be great to have like the media talking to like the liberals, you're right, in this kind of like, and to make explicit the understanding that we're working together in order to sort of bamboozle the public, which is exactly what they're doing. Trevor's more left, probably Keynesian. Okay, so it sounds to me like he learned something at Toronto, which is good. The University of Toronto is largely like I sort of end up neutral, right? If you tell me like I'm a commerce student that came out of the University of Toronto, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So you may be insane, but you may not be. So let's just call it neutral, right? So Keynesian, well, and it's very difficult to be a neoliberal economist these days because of Thomas Piketty's work, right? Thomas Piketty's work really came out and basically just took a baton and just like smashed out the foundations of neoliberalism and really brought it down to the ground. So if you're still walking around being like, neoliberalism works, someone can literally just drop Thomas Piketty's Capital in front of you and just be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. Oof, I used to listen religiously to TYT. That's so sad. I completely agree with you there, bud. It is a loss. Like, it is a loss. And there's no other way to frame it. It absolutely is a loss. I agree. Coming crash, possibly as bad as Germany after World War One. They're comparing the two, looking at the state of things anyhow. Yeah. Hi, Ward. How you doing, bud? Do you think Canadian disability bill is simply divisive politics? I mean, yes. Any bill that narrows and creates like a subsection of the populace is by its very nature divisive, and it's done on purpose, right? So you can see this really clearly with how they passed the CERB, right? So the CERB gets passed in a panic, right? That there's this big pandemic coming, we don't know what it's going to look like. Oh my God, it's absolutely absurd. CERB, right? CERB, right? And the NDP and the Liberals get together, and the NDP push the Liberals further to the left on this issue, and they pass the CERB, and they do it in less than a week, really giving lie to this, like, oh, it's such a difficult thing. A basic income would be so difficult to implement. No, it wouldn't. It took a week. Fucking get it done, right? They can do it. We know they can do it. Like, stop bullshitting us. Anyway. So they passed the CERB, right, which was like a universal thing for workers, right? They could have spread that out. They could have implemented it for people with disabilities. They could have implemented it for the homeless. They could have spread that across, right? Absolutely, they could have done that. They chose not to. So, but then what they did after, what the Liberals specifically did after, was they took the CERB and they realized this is too big a system. It's too universal, right? So when we start to attack the CERB and when we start to push it down, it'll affect too many people all at once, and then we'll get a lot of political pushback. So we'll break this up into several separate chunks and then attack each one independently at different times, right? To kind of trickle out the abandonment. And in so doing, right, we can actually then pit these groups against one another. And pretend as though, like, oh well, you know, oh you're decreasing the CSB, like why are you what's going, like why you're decreasing my benefits, but this group doesn't get to decrease right? Like so it's always divisive politics, right? We could very easily pass a universal bill that says every single Canadian, regardless of status, regardless of where they're from, regardless of their needs, regardless of any of this, gets $2,000 a month. We're done, right? You could do that. But in democracies, politicians don't want to do that because it cedes a lot of power to the populace. Having one large program that everyone is a part of means that if you fuck with it or mess with it, then it affects everyone. And so that gives you much less power, right? So you've got to divide and conquer. And the disabled, of course, are an easy one to attack because they're so weak, right? And if you're, you know, a white supremacist bully, the way that our culture is, attacking disabled people is right in the wheelhouse. Right in the wheelhouse. Jimmy Dore isn't left, though. That's true. Yep, he supported Tulsi Gabbard over Bernie because Bernie wouldn't go on a show. I'm going to correct you on that. He supported Tulsi Gabbard because she was anti-war, right? Like, and you are correct to say that Jimmy Dore isn't left, but he's not right. Like, he's not to the left or the right. I think that Jimmy Dore just has a clear internal moral compass. He believes that what he believes is right, and so he's anti-war. He's pro Medicare for all, and just when it comes to the concept of like war versus Medicare, he's more on the side of war, right? And I thought that Bernie did go on his show at one point. Am I mistaken by that? No, I'm thinking of Joe Rogan. Now he spends all his time attacking the only progressive because his right-wing viewers love it. Well, and also, I do think that there is an honesty to what he's doing because I'm glad that there is a counter-narrative voice to the AOC and the Squad kind of narrative, right? Like, don't get me wrong, like, I like AOC and I like the Squad and I like the rhetoric they come up with, just like I like Bernie Sanders' rhetoric. like, I like their rhetoric, but Jimmy Dore could very well be correct when he is saying that it's just propaganda. It's just another method to control the populace and to continue funneling energy into a system that doesn't work, right? That when push comes to shove, these guys actually on our side? I think that's a perfectly acceptable question to ask. It's a perfectly acceptable question to ask if AOC and the squad and all these guys are actually on our side or not. And I mean, so far, like, what have they actually done? Like, what are their big achievements, right? Not much of anything. So, but then Sam Cedar also has an interesting point on this, which is that these things do take time, that a movement like this needs to grow, and they can't, like, they have to wield the power that they have effectively, and being obstructionists and digging their heels in and really sticking their nose into the Democratic Party's business is not necessarily beneficial for the party as a whole. Yeah, NDP doubled CERB from 1,000 to 2,000. Absolutely, yeah. And anyway, so I like Jimmy Dore because I think at the very least, Jimmy Dore is a man who is attempting to be honest. And that puts him miles and miles and miles and miles and miles ahead of everybody else. That puts him miles ahead of everybody else. That when I watch his show, sure, I can walk away and disagree, right? But I don't think he's attempting to manipulate me, and I don't think he's attempting to be dishonest. And I think he is his own independent actor, right? So is he like the most educated guy? Is he the most politically savvy guy? Is he any of that kind of stuff? No, of course not. But he's honest. And I think that puts him ahead of everybody else. Certainly the Young Turks. And I mean, and people have said to me of Jimmy Dore that they just find him annoying. And I'm like, yeah, like that's the most honest thing to say about Jimmy Dore, is that he can be a bit much. Like, he's a very, like, he's a shock jock, right? He's a scream into the camera, loses shit. Like, that's his shtick. That's his shtick. And if you don't like that shtick, then you're not going to like Jimmy Dore. And it's just like, yeah, but that's normal, right? That's normal. Which is why I try really hard not to fall for the shock jock, like, screaming kind of thing, because I do think that there are people who want to see somebody like Jimmy Dore who's not losing his fucking mind. And so here I am. Hi. Richard Medhurst is pissed because USA stole his work when they overtook press outlets from Middle Eastern companies. It's a short... Oh, you put it in the Discord? Yeah, let's go. Here, let's do it.
So the U.S. government has seized Press TV's website.
Ready to buy your contacts online?
Oh, no.
Find great deals.
Oh, no, they're going to censor me because there's an ad. If I show ads, they censor me. Okay.
Stole it like a bunch of pirates, all because we criticized the United States for being imperialist, precisely for this behavior. Thank you so much for proving our point. Do you know they shut down 33 news sites in one day from Iran, Iraq, Palestine, Yemen? Could you just imagine if Iran's government shut down CNN's website or took down ABC or PBS? They would lose it. They would be whining on every single network, throwing a fit about freedom of press and, oh, Iran's a dictatorship. But when they do it, it's totally fine. They didn't just block Press TV in the US, they blocked Press TV worldwide so people everywhere can't access this information, this news, this truth. Who gave you the right to decide what news the rest of the world can consume? Who gave you the right to come and delete all my work, the tireless work of my colleagues? Who do you think you are? This is exactly the shit we talk about when we call out US imperialism. They seized Press TV's website just like they seized Venezuela's gold, Iran's oil, Syria's oil. They're gangsters and bullies. They literally used the national emergency law to shut us down. They say that Press TV, which includes my television program, poses an unusual and extraordinary threat. I mean, if that ain't a badge of honor, you know, I'm gonna take that, I'm gonna wear it right here. You just proved everything we say about Western imperialism is true. This shows that we're having an impact, and they are terrified of people who speak the truth and expose the US empire and Great Britain and Israel. Best believe, man, if the US government is trying to silence you, you're doing something right. This is an attack on journalists, it's an attack on foreign press, and it's an attack on the axis of resistance. What do all these websites have in common? They're Arabic, Persian, Muslim, and they criticize the US and defend Palestinians. Two truths you will never hear on corporate media. We talk about how brutal the sanctions are, how Israel is occupying Palestine, about Julian Assange. We talk about their hypocrisy. So now Press TV is banned in both the UK and the US. right? These countries who claim to be liberal democracies, who shut down foreign outlets that say things they don't like, who jail journalists, who expose them, and who then have the audacity, the stones, to come and lecture about press freedoms. You fucking hypocrites. You know, if our journalism and our expose of the truth poses an unusual and extraordinary threat, and the agents of empire label us as such, then that's a label that I'm going to wear with pride. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't think that that's enough to silence him, right? Like, like, shouldn't we have a more nuanced perspective of the Assad regime? Like, I mean, I don't actually know that much about this fellow that was just speaking there, but I do find it troubling. I find it very troubling that a news media organization like his own, yeah, like it's very, very troubling. And again, like we can have a nuanced discussion about Assad, right? I don't actually have a very well-formed opinion of Assad, honestly. Like it's the Syrian conflict is one of those conflicts that I'm just like, I just haven't put the energy in to actually tear open that hole and stare into the void of the Assad regime. I just haven't ever found, and honestly, I just have never really found it to be that necessary, frankly. Like, Syria is a very small area. It's certainly, like, tied in with the Iraqi conflict, with the Palestinian conflict. It's certainly tied into all of this. But, and certainly Turkish politics and all of that. But getting into, like, the intricacies of the Assad regime and the intricacies of how that... I do know that the chemical weapons story that they have, that has been peddled through the West, is probably false. Like, that's probably false. And so that enough is... it's very troubling, but I just don't like well, yeah, Aaron Mate is better to look at. I think that's absolutely true. Like, I think... I don't really like Medhurst either. Like, and anytime I've encountered him... And I understand why he's like this. Like, I'm not trying to say he's a bad person or that. I just think that we're not connecting on the same kind of energy wavelength. He's very forceful. And I mean, I understand why he's being very forceful, right? And I also understand why he would want to defend a leader of a country, right? Like, and yeah, so he's from Syria, right? And like, I do think that like his position has to be anti-Western imperialist, right? And when you draw those lines in this, one of the things I've really noticed, right, is once you draw lines in the sands and you pick sides, you cannot critique internally. You just can't do that. So, great example of what I'm talking about is my critique of the Hong Kong situation between China and Hong Kong. I just genuinely cannot have this conversation on some subreddits. There are some subreddits that I go to. Gen Zedong, I think, is the big one. And they're just not interested. They don't care. They don't care what information you have. They don't care what your argument is. They don't care, right? Because that's a pro-China subreddit. And so nuanced conversation is just not allowed. It's just not allowed. And so I think Medhurst has probably got a similar thing going on where it's like, we are under attack from Westerners. There is an ongoing, unfolding war going on in this region. I know what side I'm on, and I'm just not going to allow critiques to exist, right? That let's save critiques for times of peace. That's something for the historians to deal with. I think it was probably what Medhurst's position is. Well, yeah, and like we just heard him. He's aggressive. He's trying to whip up the troops, right? And I could see why that would be very effective in a wartime kind of situation. Very, very, very troubling that he's being censored. Very, very troubling. That tells me that America is planning something larger in this region. That's what that tells me. When like censoring on that kind of level, on that kind of scale, is itself an act of war and is usually done to cover actions that are going to happen very shortly. So they're censoring them, and then what are they going to do in Syria, do you think? Yeah, same with our Ontario, Canada with Conservatives. There are definitely fascists in our Ontario, Canada, for sure. Like, there are definitely, like, and it's a pretty well-organized fascist group in there, for sure. Yep. Disrupt the communications before the attack, for sure. So again, corporate Canada used government's pandemic emergency wage subsidy as slush fund, right? Like, and this is, what's the number? What's the number? While other pandemic relief programs, no, go away. Yeah, there you go. Reach 110 billion over 2 years, right? Reminding everybody, 100 billion is the number that the basic income would cost. And of course, the Conservatives will stand up and screech about that all day long. But you give $100 billion to corporations, normal, totally fine. Yeah, they'll just offshore that or buy back their own shares or something, right? Completely normal. Normal society, completely normal. And like, we could very easily, like, a headline like this: corporate Canada used government's pandemic emergency wage subsidy as a slush fund, as well as the numbers that you see throughout this article. We could fund a basic income. It wouldn't be a problem. And it gets stupider the more you think about it, right? Like, the number is 100 billion. That's what's being thrown around. 100 billion, right, is being thrown around. Oh, it's so costly. We have an $8 trillion economy. $100 billion is fucking nothing. Fucking nothing. Have I heard of Neom, planned Saudi city? I have not. I gotta tell you, I do find Saudi Arabia to be like a fascinating place. Like, when you... Is this it right here, bud? Like, it's... I mean, there's been a lot of, like, planned cities and things like this. Like, in many ways, Abu Dhabi. Like, I mean, take a look at this. Like, a lot of this infrastructure and all this kind of stuff is built into the water. Like, they've literally built this. And Saudi Arabia is so fascinating because it is, like, it's so hilarious when we accuse, like, China of being a dictatorship, or, like, Soviet Russia as a dictatorship, and this is why we should hate it and all this kind of stuff. Like, one of the major allies in the region for the United States is Saudi Arabia, and they're literally a kingdom. Like, it's literally like kings and princes and shit. Like, it's straight up like something from like a medieval period, and here we are with like the Saudi princes and all of this kind of nonsense. And Saudi Arabian politics itself are actually really fascinating anytime I delve in, because it is all just like the Saudi prince takes all the billionaires and locks them into a hotel until they give him a certain amount of their wealth. Like, that kind of story where it's just like gangster shit. Like, and don't get me wrong, like, these fucking Saudi Arabians are doing some horrible shit. Absolutely. And it's all being done in order to maintain their power, right? That they know that it is completely possible. Planned city. They know it's completely possible that an Arab Spring happens to them. They're very aware of it. Ah, okay. Okay. So that's like here. So that would be like where like Magna is. So this is like in early days of planning for sure. It's planned cross-border city in the Tabuk province of Northwestern is planned to incorporate smart city technologies. Yep. North of the Red Sea, east of Egypt, across the Strait of Tiran, and south. Interesting. The project has an estimated cost of $500 billion, or 5 basic incomes. So it's got to be up here, right? Like, it's got to be planned. No, it's not across the Gulf. What am I talking about? Planned cross-border in the Tabuk province. Tabuk province. So that's Tabuk right there. Cross-border. So they're probably... Interesting. I'm trying to think about, like, what's the goal here from Saudi Arabia? I mean, let's see what the article has to say. The project is planned to be totally powered. CEO of Nom... Yeah. Inspiration. Like, why? That's my big question about this. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we putting a city here? Probably to try and control this sea lane and try and control this area a little bit more. And this looks like it's not an American project. I think that's the big thing. This looks this has the look that this is mainly internal. This is mainly internal. And if that's the case, it looks to me like this project, the idea of this project is to prevent the Greater Israel project from being successful. That's how I'm looking at this. That the Greater Israel project is to expand Israel, to take over Jordan, to take over sections of Saudi Arabia, certainly to take over the Suez Canal, right? Basically cut the line right here, leaving Cairo stranded, take over the Suez Canal, put that into Israeli jurisdiction, and basically this whole region becomes Israel. That's the goal of the Greater Israeli project. And if Saudi Arabia is planning on putting a city like here, essentially, Dork, then that kind of expansion wouldn't be very successful into Saudi Arabia. That you would have like a city and presumably a military base right here. But also from just a straight trade perspective, it could also be a trade thing, because yeah, interesting to see that Saudi Arabia is doing that, and Saudi Arabia can do all this kind of crazy shit. Like, you take a look at, like, again, like the United Arab Emirates, which is an extension of Saudi Arabia, frankly. Like, it's like they're building like massive. Look at this. Look at what they built here, right? Like, why build this? I mean, they got another one over here, and these are just like water parks and shit, right? They just built this shit, right? Because they have like billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. They literally can just build what they want, and they do, and so building a city like this, yeah, we'll see how that unfolds. Interesting. Military admit it made errors aiming propaganda at Canadians and spying on Black Lives Matter groups. What? I'm surprised that the military is admitting it. That's nice. When it first came out that the military was spying on Black Lives Matter groups, people kind of lost their minds about it, and I was just like, yeah. Like, what do you fucking think the military's for? Like, of course they're going to do that. Of course they're going to do that. What matters, in my view, is not that they're spying on them. It's what they do, right? It's what they do with that. Because, like, is it so outlandish to believe that the prevailing military force in our domestic borders is interested in whether or not organizations are going to radicalize and become violent? I mean, I think it's, like, especially from an internal military perspective, that's pretty rational, right? Like, we are the military. We are here to maintain domestic peace and to defend these borders from foreign invasion. Here is a group of citizens that are coming together. Are they violent or not? Do we need to blow these guys up, right? That's just like literally military history since the dawn of time. So it wasn't shocking to me. Yeah, this is the problem, right? Canadian military circulates fake letters warning wolves are on the loose. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You don't need to circulate fake shit. Like, this is the thing that really bothers me about this story is like, and what bothers me about modern day propagandists generally is that, like organizations like the CIA and all this kind of stuff, is that they pretend as though they've got it in hand, right? They pretend as though, oh, we can lie to the populace in large mass scale ways, and any blowback that occurs from that we'll totally have control of. No, you don't. Fucking no, you don't. You'll never have control of that. The populace is like an unwieldy, moving force of nature that's gonna go in ways that you don't anticipate, and are gonna and with profound outcomes that you can't even imagine. Like the QAnon movement itself, right? Who sees this coming? Who sees a QAnon movement coming out of the Republican Party that gains so much power within that party that they end up electing Donald fucking Trump? Like, the CIA didn't see that coming, right? Like and it's 100% coming from the fact that they're propagandizing their citizens so much that people don't know what's real and what's fake anymore. And that's very dangerous. It's very dangerous to create a society of mistrust the way that these organizations have done. And so when the military is telling me that they're circulating fake letters, like, why? Why is, like, it's one thing for the military to, like, look at Black Lives Matter and be like, is this something we need to be concerned about from, like, a domestic safety issue, right? That's one thing. They're the military, right? That's their interest. But it's another to then take the information you get and conclude that no, they're not. Like, Black Lives Matter largely is not a dangerous organization to, like, sovereignty or any of that kind of stuff. They are largely a peaceful protest movement that exists within our borders. And to then act against them, to circulate fake letters, like, yeah, not only violated federal rules, but military commanders who ordered them had no authority to do so. Like, this is a pretty major scandal. This is a pretty major scandal, right? Like, errors conducted during domestic operations and training, and sometimes insular mindset at various echelons, have eroded public confidence in the institution, yeah? This included the conduct of information operations in a domestic operation without explicit direction or authority to do so, as well as the unsanctioned production of reports that appeared to be aimed at monitoring the activities of Canadians. To me, it's not the spying, it's the lying. Like, that's the thing. That because if you're going to spy on citizens, if you're going to create, like, a profile of the people who are organizing and protesting and then begin to lie about it, right? Like, I expect the spying, but the lying? No, that's when you delegitimize yourself. That's when you delegitimize yourself. That's when you're no longer trustworthy. That's when we get to stand up as citizens and be like, oh, you're fucking lying to us. Like, why should we believe a word you say? Why should we trust anything you do? Doesn't that just legitimize the protest movement? Doesn't that just make it so that the protest movement is completely validated? Because not only are you spying on them, but you're turning around and bullshitting us about it, right? Like, so you completely validate the protest movement and invalidate yourself. And that's very dangerous, right? I, for one, would like to trust my military. I, for one, would like to look at my military and think, here's an organization that actually might have my best interests in mind. But if you're going to do this, I can't. I literally can't. I can't look at the Canadian military and trust it and believe that it's actually organized for my best interests if they are fundamentally going to lie about things and fundamentally attempt to manipulate the populace in order to have us believe things that are false. So shame on our military. Like, shame on our military, and shame on the people in the military. You can do better than this. Like, you can do a lot better than this, right? So 4 internal military investigation into the military's use of propaganda tactics were launched following a series of citizen stories last year, including one that exposed the military's plan to establish a propaganda operation designed to influence the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors of Canadians. Go fuck yourself. Like, go fuck yourself. You're the military. You're not a propaganda outlet, right? You're not a media outlet. You're the military, right? You do what our elected officials and our elected civilian officials say. That's what you do as the military, right? And if suddenly the military is going to start turning around and propagandizing us, right? Well, here's a piece of propaganda that a military would like to do. The military is good. Do what the military says. No. Like, fuck you. No. Like, fuck you. No. Like, this kind of article completely vindicates people like me. It completely validates people like me. It completely allows people like me to continue doing this work, knowing full well that our military is attempting to manipulate our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. You're not going to manipulate my attitude, belief, and behavior, right? And all you do, and the blowback you're going to receive, to use CIA propaganda terms, the blowback you're going to receive from doing this kind of thing is a decline in trust of the military, which then turns into a larger confrontation, where guess what? You're super going to have to start using force against the populace because you are the ones that are eroding the public trust. Just stop it. Just stop it. Recant, repent, admit you made a mistake. Sounds like you're starting to do that. But can I believe that you're serious or genuine about that even? Right? So, yeah, the military kiboshed the plan last November, soon after the Citizen broke the story. So when we found out about it, so when we found out that you were erecting an institution to lie to us as a military operation, you stopped. Oh, okay. So as long as it can be clandestine and successfully manipulate the populace from the shadows, you're perfectly fine with keeping it in place. But the second it's observed, you have the wherewithal to shut it down and then apologize. Yeah, okay. Sounds to me like we need a full-scale investigation and a full-scale audit of the Canadian military. The Canadian Joint Operations Command Headquarters issued a plan for using propaganda techniques against Canadians during the pandemic, despite receiving no orders to do so from the federal government. Full-scale military investigation on this, please. Military intelligence officers violated rules when they mined data from ordinary Canadians' social media accounts because they failed to conduct a risk assessment before doing so. Last September, military staff sparked panic in Nova Scotia when they forged letters warning the public that wolves were on the loose. Investigators found the staff behind the letter lacked formal training and that soldiers did not properly understand policies governing the use of propaganda techniques. Another review found the military's public affairs branch plan to launch a propaganda operation was incompatible with the Government of Canada's communications policy and the mission and principles of public affairs. We need a full-scale investigation on this. No, I don't accept this. I don't accept that our military is planning on lying to us, nor do I accept that there are rogue elements within the military that feel that they are permitted to lie to Canadians about what's happening. No, go fuck yourself. People should lose their jobs over this. I expect high-scale resignments. Like, I expect people like a general. Like, I expect some like large-scale, high-level people. Like, go fuck yourselves. We have CSIS. Like, we have the liars. Like, the liars are over there. We know that they're the liars, right? I don't need my military to also be lying to me. Thank you very much. Go fuck yourselves. And all this does is just erode trust in military institutions. That's all it does, right? And you're just going to end up in a situation where people are just going to not trust the military. Congratulations, I guess. You did it. You successfully shot yourself in the foot. Do you think U.S. can effectively interfere in Canadian elections? More specifically, though, Ward, I don't think the U.S. cares to interfere in Canadian elections. Like, they don't need to interfere in our elections so long as they can interfere with the people who are elected, right? That the United States can go up to any elected official and just start fucking with them, right? And just start messing with them in very real ways. That the U.S., I'd be very surprised, in truth, to find out that the United States is like directly interfering with our elections because of the like series of alliances and things that we have. Because they know that after the election is over, they can literally walk up to anyone that's elected and fuck with them, right? And they know that they have the power and the ability to do that. So they don't need to mess with our elections, right? They can mess with our elected officials regardless of who is in power. And yeah, Jason Kenney is a good example of kind of what I'm talking about. Like, it didn't matter. Like, Jason Kenney got into power and then the Americans start fucking with him, right? And start talking to him. And somebody like Jason Kenney is, like, absolutely on board with that. Like, he's for sure, like, taking the bribes and drinking the Kool-Aid. They were using dark money to fund an entire bamboozle leadership campaign during the UCP leadership race. Oh, yeah. But, like, on the same level as, like, CIA interference, right? Like, I'd be very... And this is the thing that's so funny. Like, tens of thousands of dollars in fines from the election commissioner. So, like, I give $2 million and it results in a $10,000 fine. It sounds like just the cost of doing business, right? Like, that's classic stuff. Like, if breaking the law, if breaking the law is cheaper than maintaining the law, they'll always break the law. Which is why I've been saying for a long time, fuck these fines. We need prison sentences. Like, you need to attach prison sentences to corporate crime, right? That when a corporation pollutes or breaks the law and does all that kind of stuff, sure, you can have a fine, but there should also be prison time attached to it. You attach prison time to some of this stuff, watch them stop. Watch it all dry up, right? Because, like, these guys don't want to go to prison. Like, even if it was for a year, like, they don't want to go to prison, right? But they're the ones writing the legislation, so they'll never actually say, hey, corporate white-collar crime should come with prison sentences. Yeah, this is a very, very disappointing story, this one. Like... I'm extremely disappointed in our military. I'm extremely disappointed. I expect a full-scale investigation on this. And if the Liberal Party is not going to move forward with a full-scale investigation, then I don't know why we're supporting them, right? Here we have the military outright admitting that it was doing actions against the populace. And lying to the populace and allowing rogue elements within the military to lie to the populace. Yeah, we need a full-scale investigation, followed up with some indictments. Right? These people cannot be in positions of power and authority if they're going to do this to the Canadian populace. The military works for us. Catholic group gives formal commitment to disclose all records from BC and Saskatchewan residential schools. That's good. That's good. That's good. The I feel as though there is a like the weight of this, the overwhelming wave of it is just absolutely overwhelming these institutions. That they're just, like when it was Kamloops, you know, they kind of, the rumblings began, but now the Saskatchewan one, like 750 kids coming out of a mass grave. It's an enormous number. And like the tsunami of this story is just beginning, right? Like it's just beginning. Like literally we're at the point where the wave is just forming. Right? And eventually it's going to be like this tsunami tidal wave of force because the story is just going to get so fucking absurd and overwhelming and ridiculous. And if you try to stand in the way of it, you are going to get wiped out. Like that, I don't know if you guys know this story. Who was it? Mississauga. Pastor. Good church did. No, that's too vague. And I also spelled Mississauga wrong. Look at my spelling. Look how bad my spelling is, guys. Oh my god, look at this. Absolutely disaster. Church of the Redeemer Statement. Come on. Why am I struggling finding this? It was a big story for just a moment, and I wanted to play it. Mrs. Saga. And I'm still, even though I admit that it's like bad spelling, but I right click on it to get the spelling, and it's not, so it's not my fault. Yeah, there we go. Here we go. Yeah, Mississauga pastor under fire for saying there was good done in residential schools, right?
It all starts with
Oh
one.
my god, oh my god. I hate this. Show me the clip. Show me the clip. Come on, we all know, like, there's a clip. And now they're gonna make me go through the thing. We all know that the good being done in the good with the world and the goodness of the world. Good world in your goodness. Do your thing for Canada and goodness. Only you can fight forest fires. Yeah, I'm just lampooning. Just lampooning. Oh my god, oh my god. A 30-second ad? Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Okay, are we there yet? Oh, and then you're gonna do like a whole thing before you even show me the clip? Really? Come on. No, and then the response to the clip. Show the clip. Show the friggin' clip. What's this nonsense? Oh my goodness. Okay, how embarrassing. How embarrassing. I bet you if I just go to like videos. Is this it? Here we go. Come on. Oh, come on. Sorry, guys. Sorry, this is so bad. You know what? I bet you if I just go to YouTube, Owen Keenan. Here we go.
The results and
Cool.
see who was buried there, why, and when before rendering ultimate judgment. Just when we think it may be safe to go back in the water, 2/3 of the country blames the church which we love, to which we belong, for which we make great efforts, for the tragedies that occurred there. Now, I presume that the same number would thank the church for the good that was done in those schools, but of course that question was never asked. And in fact, we're not allowed even to say that good was done in those schools. I await to see what comes to my inbox.
So this guy has recanted from this almost immediately. Like, almost immediately. Yeah. Justin. Yeah. What? I think that's exactly the right reaction to have. Right? That's exactly the right reaction to have. Just like... And the reason why I think it's super important to play these kinds of clips and to pay attention to this kind of stuff is that these people exist in the world.
Blames the church which we love, to which we belong, for which we make great efforts, for the tragedies that occurred there. Now, I presume that the same number would thank the church for the good that was done in those schools, but of course that question was never asked. And in fact, we're not allowed even to say that good was done in those schools.
So in around 1910, right, in about 1910, somebody actually went into these residential schools specifically to investigate this claim that there's good happening in the schools. And the fellow, I wish I had saved this article, but and I'll spare us the sift about. And his conclusion in 1910 or thereabouts was that 7 out of every 10 indigenous kid that went into these schools was dying, right? 70% of the kids that went into these residential schools died there, right? That was his statement. So, like, this Owen Keenan, right? When he says the good that was done in the residential schools, he's living in a delusional space where he imagines some kind of good. But when you actually take it down and put it into reality where we live, you can see pretty clearly that this guy is just fucking delusional. And he has since recanted from this position. But the reason why I play this is that the reason that I play this is that he's is to show that these people exist. Here they are, right? And if this guy exists, standing in front of a pulpit, saying it out loud for everyone to see, you can be sure as shooting that there's a whole bunch of people beneath him who are not standing up in front of a national audience and saying these things out loud. Is it Dr. Bryce that I'm talking about? I even forgot his name. Dr. Here, you got me. Dr. Bryce. Yes. I think, yeah, whistleblower on residential schools. Yeah, the Canadian, let's get our facts straight. I just recently read about this. So, Henderson Bryce, physician, public health official. He is most remembered for his efforts to improve health and living conditions of Indigenous people. His report on the Indian School of Manitoba and the Northwest Territories exposed the unsanitary conditions of residential schools in the prairie provinces. It also prompted a national call for residential school reform, right? Like, and if you go and you actually read the article, here we go. Yeah. Indigenous people are dying of tuberculosis at a rate almost 20 times higher than that of non-Indigenous Canadians. Like, at one institution, the File Hills Colony Residential School, Bryce found that 69% of all alumni had died, almost all of them from tuberculosis. Bryce concluded that these deaths resulted in the poor conditions and lack of sanitation within the schools. His report made it clear that the federal government was directly responsible for these conditions. Like, but guys.
For the tragedies that occurred.
But guys.
Now, I presume that the same number would thank the church for the
God
good
thank the
that
church.
was done in those schools. But of course, that question was never asked. And in fact, we're not allowed even to say that good was done in those schools.
Why isn't anybody thinking about the good that happened in those schools, right? Why isn't anybody thinking about the good that happened in those schools? 31% of all those alumni didn't die, right? So 31% of the people who went into this institution didn't die, right? So think about the good that came out of that, right? Something good must have happened there, right? 31% of them didn't die of tuberculosis. Like, and it's so important for us to listen to people like this and realize, like, these fucking people exist, man. They exist, and they will, and there are 100% people who are going to take this kind of thinking to the grave, that they are always going to believe that white culture and white people did the Indian a favor, right? Like that kind of thinking. And the very fact that a pastor in Mississauga feels that he can or is safe enough in his society and feels that he can stand up and say this in public, well, if he's willing to do that, there's a bunch of people underneath him. There's a bunch of people underneath him who think this way. And my hope is that the absolute fucking tsunami that is coming will just wipe these guys out. That they just will not be able to at least say these things publicly. But now, because of this guy, as well as a bunch of other people, Rex Murphy, right, Jordan Peterson, like, because of these guys, like, we know there's a huge segment of the population, right? We know there's an enormous section of the population that either is completely ignorant of this, or more terrifyingly, and I'm afraid to say probably more accurately, don't care, right? That they look at this residential school system and they just kind of shrug and be like, oh, what are you going to do? I should save this one because this is a good article to save. Add to bookmarks. Add to bookmarks. Add to bookmarks. Oh, hey, and I didn't actually say hi to you, DJ. Thanks for popping in, bud. Good to see you. And thanks for reminding me about Dr. Bryce. That's good. That was very helpful. Let's clear some of this back. I don't need any of this stuff. I should probably save this too. Can I save it? This action is turned off for content made for kids. Alright, I'll just bookmark it. Bookmarked. Okay. Okay. Yeah, student found guilty in sexual assault at Toronto's St. Mike's School. Yeah. I feel like a year can't go by with that kind of thing. Biden says cities should spend leftover COVID funds on hiring cops. So I have kind of a duality on this point so the Biden administration has actually doubled the amount of funding that they are giving for hiring new police officers. And there's a duality to this in my view, which is it's the rise of the police state, right? Like let's get more cops, let's get more kind of stuff. But over the Black Lives Matter period, as well as the COVID period, there has been an exodus from police services. That police have been completely demoralized. A huge number of cops have left the service, including like sergeants, including lieutenants. So like not small levels of police services. And if that's the case, then this puts Biden in a position where if he even wants to maintain the existent level of policing that exists in America, well, then you need to put forward a massive initiative in order to get more cops, right? But the problem, of course, is that at this stage in the game, the only people that you're actually going to get are the thugs, are the people who are the overt white supremacists and the overt racists and the overt people who are literally getting into the game just to crack heads, right? And because there is no like cop education system, because it only takes like 4 weeks or 6 weeks of sitting in a room listening to lectures to become a cop, right? There's no real vetting system in America. So you're going to end up with a police force that's stupid, angry, belligerent, and racist, right? That's what you're going to end up with, because all of the people of good conscience, or even all of the people who are not interested in engaging in a full-scale civil war, have already left, right? And so what Biden is doing here, even in his best case, like let's take Biden's side situation, what he is doing is filling the ranks with thugs so that they can fight protesters in the street. That's what he's doing. And so it's just another Civil War push, and the Civil War in America is on. And instead of taking that money and creating things like, I don't know, a basic income, creating things to actually help people in the populace so that they could live their lives in peace, he's going to take that money and get more cops. Public Health Agency warns of fall COVID resurgent if Delta variant becomes dominant strain. I don't know what to think about this Delta variant. I don't know what to think because there's lots of conflicting information coming out. And of course, like the conflicting information, I generally lean on the public health agencies because the public health agencies are at least mandated to think about the public. Whereas all of the like pro-vaccine information I've seen is coming out of the private industry, right? Is like, so Pfizer says that its vaccine works against the Delta variant. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course Pfizer is going to say that. Like, so I'm quite concerned, especially as we begin to loosen our restrictions, as we begin to loosen what's happening here in Toronto, that we could fall into the second wave again, right? Like the second wave can overtake, and that the second wave is the push. Oh, DJ, that's so nice of you to say. Yeah, man, all good. Sorry, just making food, so I'm lurking. I always enjoy your show and hanging out. I love it, bud. Yeah, lurk away, bud. Lurk away. I'm happy with that. I get 3 emails from Public Health a shift. It's them updating the updates. Oh, so you would be closer to this than me, Jeff. What's your feeling? Do you think? Like, how comfortable are you feeling about these Delta variants? Because you might be a little bit more knowledgeable. My concern is that we're just going to end up into the second wave again, where like September, October happens and it starts to pick up, and because we're heading towards Christmas, corporate capitalism cannot lock down over Christmas. They cannot lock down over Christmas. Yeah, nobody knows. Yeah, there you go, Jeff. Honesty. The approval process is completely independent. Sorry, bud. What approval process? Oh, of vaccines. Yeah, I think Jeff is just sort of hitting the nail on the head here. Like, nobody really does know. We are just kind of like crossing our fingers and hoping, right? And so like I really hope. I think that if we make it to Christmas, and there's no more uptick in cases, or even if there is an uptick, it's kind of shallow. I think that'll be it. People will be happy to declare it a victory and moving on. But I suspect, and I'm concerned, that we will plow towards Christmas with that kind of capitalist zeal, and the variant will spread around just like it did during the second wave, and businesses will stay open, everything will stay open, because corporate capitalism cannot miss Christmas. That is just like a rule of capitalism. Like, they will allow enormous sections of the populace to die off before they miss Christmas. You cannot miss Christmas. It's just not part of the deal. All right, let's check this out. This is nice. So 100 years of Communist Party of China, 6-minute light show in Shanghai. Yeah, let's go. Imagine being here for this. This is cool. And look, they've got is that Mao? Up on the sky. I think that this is so much better than like a fireworks show. Fireworks shows have gotten really weird to me. Like, anytime I go to a fireworks thing, I just feel very like it's just like it's a little too close to the marrow, if you ask me. Like, these could be bombs. Where something like this is like celebrating their construction, and celebrating the building that they've been doing. Nice piece of music too. Hey, Dan. We're just enjoying, this is a light show that was put on by the Communist Party of China to celebrate 100 years of communism in China. I love this, the way they've lit up their buildings right on their on the harbor front here. That looks so beautiful. And they're projected into the sky, right? Like, how are they doing that? That's really cool. I guess that's like the same technology they used to like make Tupac. Remember this? How they made like a holographic Tupac? This kind of thing has got to scare the shit out of Western imperialists, man. This has just got to scare the shit out of Western imperialists. Like, you don't want to see. It is state propaganda. Yeah. Let's not bullshit ourselves, right? That this is definitely like a cultural moment that's being created by the state in order to support, give support for the state. It's still really incredible. It's still really something to look at. You need to have like anime characters in here, right? Don't you think? Like have like quick cuts of like anime characters. This is the kind of song they would play while like Ichigo is like, right? Oh yeah, dude. I feel like they're making a decision not to use fireworks. I feel like they're choosing not to use fireworks, which is interesting. Yes, the Radu run in the sky. With the red. Nice. Oh, I'm glad I watched that. That was good. Look, the thing I keep saying about China, and the reason why Western countries are so scared of China, is that China's exponential growth was completely unpredicted, and there, sure, you can find a couple of voices here and there that are saying like China's exponential growth is like gonna happen, but nobody in the political sector in America really bought into that. And now China is like has caught up in many ways, like not fully obviously, but like in many ways has caught up to its Western contemporaries. And if it continues its exponential growth pattern, right, it will supersede. Like it will become bigger and more advanced. And like you just saw this right here, like this. 100 years ago, this fucking place was like twigs and paper, right? Like it didn't look like this. And so if you're like a Western capitalist looking at something like this, that's terrifying. This is terrifying. Like the idea that you can build a society on alternative principles that run against capital and against the way that capitalism operates, and you can build a successful society that then will supersede the economic growth of the capitalist structure. It's very dangerous for the capitalists. And China is starting to do stuff like they're planning a moon base 2025. They already have started a fusion reactor. They've already they already have like the largest infrastructure programs, like the Belt and Road Initiative itself Like, Westerners have not done anything. Yeah. Wild idea. Investing in public infrastructure is a guaranteed return on investment, which is why the Canada Infrastructure Bank is so gross. And Western civilization is really hit a wall where it doesn't benefit the billionaires to build infrastructure, right? So it doesn't benefit the billionaires to actually build anything or to go anywhere because there's no profit to it. That they want to just erect tolls and they want to erect wedge themselves into existing systems and parasticize the system that already exists. That's what capitalism is doing. And what that means as we move forward is it means that what our children inherit will be diminished. That we're actually diminishing the inheritance of our children. That they will receive crumbling infrastructure. That they will receive a bunch of infrastructure that has a shit ton of tolls on it. And those tolls will end up going to like dynastic families and shit like this, right? That 100 years from now, our children are going to be like still dealing with the extraction process of getting rid of these capitalists unless we confront them before. And this is all assuming we survive. While China is literally handing to its children infrastructure projects and societies and a political system that doesn't have any of this tolls in it, doesn't have any of this bullshit in it, and infrastructure that's maintained through mandate. Unless something significantly changes within Chinese society, which it could, but it doesn't have any. There's no signs of that, right? And like the capitalist system, insofar as it exists in China, is tightly regulated and tightly controlled, like and has high level scrutiny put on it because the communists are very aware that capitalists and capitalism is kind of a boil. But they need to have a certain degree of capitalism within its society, or else they can't interact with the rest of the world. And most of the rest of the world is capitalist. So they have to kind of include it. But they're very explicit when you go see the Chinese documents. They're just like, yeah, we're including this, but like we'd really love if we could kind of push this out. Yeah, the U.S. did it and experienced the same explosion after World War II. Yeah, like build infrastructure, right? It's always good. It's always a return on investment. Like if you ever see a politician that's cutting funding for transit services, you can basically say that they're a grifter right off the bat. Because for every dollar you put into transit services, you get $4 back, right? Like it's always good to build transit. It's always good. It's always smart. You always get a return on investment. There's no evidence that says the counter to that is true. That's why someone like Doug Ford is such an embarrassment, because Doug Ford came in and committed austerity against the populace, and it's like austerity fails. It doesn't work. You're literally saying that, oh, we're in a recession or our economy is kind of regressing, and so the way to resolve that is to regress it further, right? That the spending that the government is doing, well, it should do less spending. And that'll somehow encourage more spending. Like, it's incoherent on the face of it, and it doesn't work. Whereas if you turn around and take your wealth and put it into big infrastructure projects and things like this, well, your kids are certainly going to be grateful for it. Like, your kids are the inheritance of your children is going to be like beautiful cities with parks and infrastructure and transit systems that work. Right? And like, we've just allowed grifters to take over, and it's going to get very obvious. I'd say, like, unless climate change rears its head and actually wipes us out, like, by the time we hit 2050, like, we're going to be some like dusty shithole, and China is going to be like literally putting people on Mars. Like, while Elon Musk's kids are being like, yeah, Mars, we can get there. Yeah, right. Edmonton didn't want to invest the money to put the LRT expansion underground, and so now it blocks traffic to a hospital, and the train goes, with no exaggeration, 30 kilometers an hour through most of it. Yeah. It's a total. And these people who are standing up and saying, "Oh, that's a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of money." They're so stupid because the pennies that they say, like, they're keeping pennies to lose dollars. That's what they're doing, right? Like it literally is just the case that like these people don't want to put a penny on the table and then pick a dollar up, right? Like if I told you, okay, it's going to cost you a penny, right? But I'll give you a dollar, right? That's a deal everyone with a brain in their head would take. Everybody. Nobody would stand against that, right? But except these guys from Edmonton and except Western capitalists, right? They'll for sure they'll hold on to their penny, right? And just let that dollar go on by, right? Which is what they're doing. Yeah, we could nationalize ONG and get $80 per barrel in royalties versus $4. Yeah, all that kind of shit. That fight was lost with the Mulroney government, right? We had nationalized our oil and gas sectors. Our oil and gas sectors were nationalized. They were controlled by the federal government, and Mulroney privatized them. That fight was lost with the Mulroney government. Again, another disastrous conservative government, right? Holy crap, that's such a good saying. Ignore the dollar, keep the penny. That should be slammed on all NDP ads talking about conservative. Yeah, I'm a genius, buddy. When are you people going to realize that I am a genius? Like, I am a literal genius walking around just spewing amazing ideas and slogans and good thoughts. I just don't have any money. Yeah. Dropping dollars to pick up dimes, right? Like, that's another way of phrasing it. Dropping dollars to pick up dimes. Like, we do that all the time. Run the NDP, please. Run for federal leadership. Yeah, I'll get right on that with all the money I have. Like, Vince, like, you're talking to a guy right now that's in hard survival mode. Like, I'm in hard survival mode right now. That, like, I need to actually be able to pay my own rent first. And then we can start talking about this kind of shit. Which, now's a great time to bring up, if you haven't donated to my Patreon, please consider dropping $1 in my Patreon, or more if you believe that you can commit to more, but even $1 helps. Please let me pay my rent. Thank you. I'm kidding about the genius stuff. I'm just being an asshole. Universal basic income will free up more people for work. Yeah. Like, and to do the work that actually matters to the society instead of the capitalists. Ontario, June 25th update. This is COVID update. 256 new cases. We are getting like sub 300 pretty regularly now. Like, I think it's been like a full week of sub 300, which is really good. That's really good. You know, that's I keep saying on this channel, and I'm starting. And I mean, if you guys know me, like, I'm a deep skeptic. I'm skeptical of everything I see and read. But even I am starting to get to a place where I'm like, okay, this could be over. Like, this could be over. That the variant narrative is sort of the last kind of hurrah. And even that is starting to feel more just cautious, right? More just our institutions just being cautious than it is like completely being like there's actually a tsunami coming, right? So I'm starting to believe, like, if we get into September, October, and cases stay down, right, and things stay plateaued, and especially if we get through Christmas, like, if we get through Christmas and it stays, even if it increases up to like 500 and then kind of goes back down, yeah, I think that we can say pretty safely that we're through it. Pretty safely that we're through it. Never forget Mike Harris's common sense revolution. 26 laters, we're still dealing with its consequences. Somebody in the chat was talking about this. Worth bringing up. The phrase common sense revolution has been used as a political slogan to describe conservative platforms with the main goal of reducing taxes while balancing the budget by reducing the size and role in government. So, like, even on its face, it fails, right? Reducing taxes while balancing the budget by reducing the size and role of government. So, reduce taxes for private individuals, so wealthy billionaires, while balancing the budget. So privatizing, this is what balancing the budget actually means. Like this, there's a big argument and a big like long form way of saying this. But when you hear balancing the budget, what you really are saying is privatize infrastructure, right? Because the only way to balance the budget is to reduce government spending, and the only way to reduce government spending is to sell off assets, right? So you have to. So balancing the budget means privatizing infrastructure. That's what it means. And by reducing the size and role of the government, how do you do that? Privatize infrastructure. So this isn't a common sense revolution. This is a privatizing infrastructure movement, which is exactly what Mike Harris did. He absolutely privatized enormous amounts of infrastructure, including long-term care homes, where he sits on the board of directors to abuse the elderly. I'm still skeptical getting shots to older people is still a problem, and Dougie is still around to F other stuff up. Yup. Yep, Dougie is still around to F other stuff up. That is definitely true. Catholic group to release all records from Maryville Kamloops residential school. It looks like the Catholic Church is getting its act together. I want to see the Anglicans get their act together. The Anglicans have been real quiet because they know that the public are turning on the Catholics, right? The public are going after the Catholics. Like Justin Trudeau called on the Catholic Church and the Pope to apologize. He didn't talk about the Anglicans. He's not talking to the Anglicans. The Anglicans have just been like, yeah, we're just, we're in the background. Don't worry about us. The Anglicans are just as guilty in all this. The Anglicans ran residential schools, right? So let's get the Archbishop of Canterbury on this. Let's get the Anglican groups to release records, please. I'm glad to see that the Catholics are hopping too, but let's get the Anglicans on board too. Yeah, and right, Trudeau says Pope should apologize on Canadian soil for church's role in residential schools. This is an easy thing for Trudeau to do, right? What he will never do, and why we need to replace him as Prime Minister if we want any movement on this, he will never launch a full-scale investigation on the government's role and the Government of Canada's role in the residential school system, because his own father was the Minister of Justice and then became the Prime Minister during periods of time like the 60s scoop in Manitoba. Like, there's absolutely no way that Pierre Elliott Trudeau was unaware of these things, right? And I mean, you can respect the position. You can respect Justin Trudeau's position, right? Like, it's his dad, right? And one of the interesting lessons of politics is that familial politics always supersedes national politics. And so he's never going to sign legislation or put anything through to tarnish his own father's legacy. And that by itself means that we need to get rid of this guy. Like, if we ever want forward momentum on this issue, we've got to get rid of Justin Trudeau. Because he's going to continuously do stuff like this, where he's going to go after the Pope and say that the Pope should come and apologize, which is easy. Like, that's easy. And if that's all the Canadian people want, is the Pope to come down and be like, oh, your Popeness, and like be like, oh, we apologize, then it could fade away. So it's a good tactic. It's a good strategy. But people like me, who are standing here being like, we need a full-scale investigation of the Government of Canada's role in these residential schools, including documents, names, statements made in Parliament. Like, we need a full investigation. It's just never going to happen with Justin Trudeau around. It's never going to happen. Yeah, corporates can get away with anything these days. It's absolutely the truth. Well, there's no rules, right? Like, there's like, in America, there's like explicitly no law. Like, it's just totally done away with. Everything's been privatized, including the legal system. So like, they can do what they want, right? And they write the legislation. So if insofar as there are rules, well, the corporations are the ones writing the law. So and the only thing they care about is how to interact with each other, right? We are just workers. Like, we can be abandoned out into the desert as far as they're concerned. And in my view, it's all going to culminate in like the Battle of Blair Mountain, which I don't know if you guys know. Blair. The Battle of Blair Mountain should be like absolutely central to our education. The Battle of Blair Mountain was the largest labor uprising in United States history and the largest armed uprising since the American Civil War. The conflict occurred in Logan County, West Virginia, part of the Coal Wars, a series of early 20th century labor disputes in Appalachia. Up to 100 people were killed, many more arrested. The United Mine Workers saw major declines in membership, but the long-term publicity led to some improvements. So for 5 days, some 10,000 armed coal miners confronted 3,000 lawmen and strikebreakers who were backed by coal mine operators during the miners' attempt to unionize. The battle ended after approximately 1 million rounds were fired, and the United States Army, represented by West Virginia Army National Guard, intervened by presidential order. And what that doesn't state is that within this, there was an aerial bombardment, that the coal miners were bombed, and it was the first aerial bombardment on American soil. I wonder if they're actually going to talk about that in this article. Yeah. And in fact, there's a song that I have learned, and I'm going to play for you guys right now, that hopefully my guitar is tuned enough so this isn't horrible. That's called 16 Tons, and it's a song that was played by the coal miners. Good enough. Some people say a man is made out of mud. Poor man's made of muscle and blood and skin and bone, and a mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. If you see me coming, step aside. A lot of men didn't and a lot of men died. I got one fist to iron, the others are steel. If the right one don't get you, the left one will. You load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. A poor man's there to suffer and bleed, to pay for a rich man's wealth and greed. Take this here shovel, get down in that earth. The money you make me, that's all that you're worth. You load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul. Whoa, 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 you load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. And the arrangement. So you see here in that song, right? The company store. The company store. So the arrangement was, come to these coal mines, we will pay you a good wage. And the wage that they were paid was good, but what they didn't tell everybody is that the coal mine company owned all the land around the coal mine and owned all of the means of distribution into the mines. And so they set the rent and they set the prices, and of course they set the rent, and of course they set the prices to be more than the wage they pay. And so this forced people who had spent all their money to get there in the first place to plunge themselves into debt, right? You load 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older, deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, because I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store, right? So this put them in a form of wage slavery, and that structure that existed and leads to the Battle of Blair Mountain and the first aerial bombardments on American soil is exactly how they're going to structure our society. That we are going to be paid a wage that will not cover our rent and will not cover our food, plunging us consistently into debt, which is why we're already in debt peonage, why debt has already blown up, because that's how the capitalists want the system to be structured, because they want us to be slaves. It's a wage slave system, and boy do I hope that we can resolve it without another Battle of Blair Mountain. Thank you guys. Thanks for your love. I appreciate it. I do. Hi Nick. I don't think I've said hi to you. Fuck. Like, imagine living through this. Imagine being a person who, like, saw an article or talked to a guy or listened to a salesman, listened to a carnival barker or something, and saw this pamphlet, and you didn't have any money because you're, in colonial America. It's post the Civil War, right? Maybe your whole thing has been fucking totally blown up, and then you see great opportunity in the coal mines. I don't have any money. I don't got anything going on, so I'm going to go down there. And you get there, and you just totally get fucked over. Like, totally fucked over. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Ward. I appreciate it. I do. I appreciate it. That's very sweet of you guys to say. I'm really looking forward to the open houses starting again. I'm really looking forward to getting out, like doing a video, like doing a live stream, and then just going out to an open mic or something. I'm really looking forward to getting back onto that. And I really need to start recording some of this stuff and start, like, as you say, Ward, creating like standalone videos and things like this. I don't know if I'm well equipped enough to be able to do that, but I should just start. I should just do it. Yeah, I should just do it. Anyway, so that song 16 Tons has persisted through American culture. And how long have I been playing guitar? 20 years. 20 years. And I'm not that good. For me, the guitar has always just been the background to my voice. Because I've always known that my voice is a gift. I've always known that that's the case. And I know that sounds kind of arrogant to say. Like, it kind of has like a Kanye sort of like, I'm a modern genius, I'm a Michelangelo, I'm Shakespeare, right? Like that kind of thing. But, there just does come a point where you got to kind of look at it and be like, yeah, I know. Like, I know. And I had very little to do with it. Like, I had very little to do with it. So, and 16 Tons is one of these songs that's persisted, but it's been, like, sanitized, right? That, like, when you listen to versions of 16 Tons, it's always done with this kind of, like, crooning, you load 16 tons, what do you get? Yeah. Another day older. When it's, like, It's literally like the poorest people in America who are going through mass scale abuse, who are being abused by capitalists and a system that is designed to destroy them, who are grabbing a hold of the people around them because there's nobody else, and are forming unions and arming up and fighting back through armed conflict against a group of total sociopaths. Like, it's an incredible story. And 16 Tons is like one of the most important American songs ever written, in my view. And the what you heard there was sort of my version of it, and the final verse is my verse. I wrote that verse. So I've taken that liberty, but I feel like I capture the spirit of the piece. Our apologies. We never would have called you an essential worker if we thought you wanted to be paid like one. Yeah. It's so funny, man, because like when you actually like put them up like this, right? When you put these like fast food icons up like this, it's actually a touch creepy. Like Burger King, he's literally a king, right? Colonel Sanders, he's a colonel, like a military general. Little Caesar, right? It's like all empire building. And then you have like a clown and a little girl. It's just kind of like, it's creepy. Young gorillas seen dismantling poachers' traps for the first time. Here we go, guys. Here we go. It's starting to happen. It's starting to happen. What I think is super, super cool about the way evolution works and the way that our society, not our society, but the natural world actually works. Like, we have a very, like, static view that, like, we are man and beneath us are, like, animals and then, like, other life forms and all this kind of stuff. But it's actually much more wobbly than that, right? That, like, we were apes and we became human, right? And that it is completely possible that we could bear witness to apes crossing the threshold, so to speak, right? And that they could begin to use tools. We've seen them start using tools, right? So we're observing human characteristics beginning to manifest in gorilla culture and all of this. And like, what do we start to do if we start to see like apes beginning to like etch words or like phrases or something of their own language and of their own creation into stone? Like, what do we do about this? Like, I know what the capitalists will do about it, right? It's really obvious what the capitalists will do about it. But like, it just like, I just think that that's fascinating. That that right beneath us is like another reality exists only by sentience. Yeah, that's an interesting statement, and you're gonna culturally appropriate gorilla culture. I don't know. I think the gorillas would be fine with that. They'd be down. Whatever. Like, anytime anybody goes and hangs out with the gorillas, they're like suspicious at first, but then, like Jane Goodall. Jane Goodall went and hung out with the gorillas, and they were initially like, "What's up? What's up?" And then she just like hung out and tried to like talk to them and like be a buddy, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, you're chill. Let's go." I think they'd be totally fine with that. Yeah. Well, and this statement, Ward, reality exists only by sentience. Like, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, which is like, okay, upfront warning to everybody, this gets into the hoob a little bit, and I don't care if you believe any of this. It doesn't matter to me, but this is definitely like how I view the reality that we're in. Like, we all agree in the scientific idea of the universe and that there's a collection of all things, and the quantum energy around us, like the quantum mechanics and the quantum scientists are saying, like, yeah, it's a singular energy that we're all based on. And so my question becomes, well, okay, is this energy sentient? Does it have sentience? And my evidence for why it would have sentience is that, well, I have sentience, I believe, right? Like, and you have sentience. Like, we all believe that we all have sentience. And so if we have sentience, then that means that the signature that creates and maintains us also does have sentience, at least as much sentience as we have, right? And because we have sentience, it has to have sentience, right? At least to the degree we have. And I think that that's fascinating to think about. Like, I think it's fascinating to think about, like, when I speak with you and when you speak with me, we are actually a singular quantum being communicating with itself. I think that that's fascinating to think about, and really, really alters and changes the type of discourse that we are having with one another, and really alters and changes your perception, or my perception, at least, of, like, have you ever met people who just, like, dismiss certain types of people? Right? Like, I've I've talked to people who, like, I've been hanging out with people, and then suddenly we'll be talking to, like, a homeless person, or we'll be talking to a person with a mental illness or disability, right? And I can see how they change and how they want to get dismissive and want to kind of push away. And my perception is, like, no, like, that person is of the quantum signature. They're having a different experience than we are having, certainly, but they're back, right? Are you okay, Justin? Gonna have a panic attack. I hope it's nothing I've said has sparked that up. I hope you're doing well, bud. I hope you're doing well. We're here for you, bud. Ward, how about them Jays? Okay. feeling a bit uncomfortable, Ward? But so, like, when I talk to people who have, like, these sorts of mental disabilities or these mental kind of things, I still feel as though I'm speaking to an equal. It's just they're going through their own experience just as I'm going through my own experience, and the energy that they have within them is just as valid as the energy that I have within me, and that when we are looking at okay, good, I'm glad to hear that, Justin. And so, and, like, when you really absorb this method of thinking, this way of thinking about the people in the world around you, right? Like, it makes it very difficult to have conversations. I'm finding that it's quite difficult to have conversations with people who do believe that there are superior life forms, right? That, like, if you genuinely do hold this sort of classic arch conservative view that, you know, there are people who are better than other people, well, how do you communicate with them when you're walking around being like, no, like, it's all energy, it's all the same, like, it's all the same thing, and any separations that exist, any separations that exist are merely illusionary, right? That they don't really exist in any meaningful kind of a way. And certainly, once you lengthen the time scale out, those differences become less and less important, right? Like, do we genuinely care that there were if there were big differences between, like, a Grecian male and a Grecian female? Like, how important are those distinctions in the scale of time? Did it really matter? And, like, it just seems to me like once you accept that we are all of the same energy, and we are this energy speaking to itself in an attempt to discover and learn something about itself, that we treat each other differently, and we could treat each other with, like, a lot more respect and dignity. And the idea that, like, a person is homeless, it's like, that's, like, what an embarrassment. What an embarrassment for us to allow a divine being that has the same energy and the same quantum signature that we do to suffer so. And what a fundamental waste of time, right? So instead of securing everything and making sure that everything is safe and making sure that everything is calm and, like, normal, so that this quantum being can engage in the only meaningful activity, which is to discover what it is we are and what we're doing, right? And to discover something about ourselves as this quantum being. Instead of doing that, we're wallowing in sort of this odd place of suffering, which could be resolved, could be absolutely resolved. And so the anyway, that's what I think about that statement, Ward. You've been drawing spiral versions of the infinite universe. You should share those on the Discord. Are you you're part of the Discord, aren't you, Ward? I'm sure you are. Quick question. Is time infinite? I don't think time exists. I think that time is a measure that man created that only operates insofar as we do. Like we are measuring the, because we're linear, right? Because we can't go back, we can only go forward, right? This creates an illusion of time, and because things decay and degrade, it's not the Canada Left Discord, Nick. It's I have my own Discord. If you are a donator, like if you donate to the Patreon, even $1, I'll send you the link and get you in. It's a nice continuation. Lets people continue the conversation and put up links and all this kind of stuff and share more information, which I think is great. So and costs $1. But yeah, we only use time as a measurement because we are linear. We only go forward, and the decay, the entropy that we all experience seems to be consistent. And so because of that, we can measure time, and it's useful so that we have a sense of like when things occurred, and we can create from this measurement of time, we can create history. And there is like a cyclical thing going on where we're going around the sun, and so you can measure that. But time itself, and interestingly, this question of time is one that even the scientific community is struggling with. That there's two different ways of thinking about it, and some people think that time exists and say that it's time is actually its own dimension, right? It's the fourth dimension, I believe. While some are saying no, time is illusionary; it doesn't exist; it's not real, and so it shouldn't be part of our equations. It shouldn't be part of how we think about things. But like, and so the answer to the question, is time infinite, is like simultaneously yes and no. Because, and certainly like a quantum being that exists would be timeless, right? That it would exist at all points in time. And so it itself would not experience time in the way that we experience, outside of its experience of our experience, because the experience that you are having is part of the larger whole of the quantum signature. Time is similar to gender in that it's a man-made concept. Yeah. I think that. I think that's right. Like it's just sort of made by humans to try to explain their own experience, and so we create this idea of time. And because it's something that we have like a consistent measurement of, and it's also tied to like the natural world, right? Like again, the Earth rotating around the sun, right? So, but like the points where we start the measurement are arbitrary, and the like the counting up or the counting down, like the BCE, right? All this kind of stuff. BC, before Christ, after Denim, or whatever it's called, Denim. But it's all for our benefit. It's like money that way, right? Like it doesn't exist, but we've created it. It's this tool that we think is useful. And I really hate clocks, because the minute we created a clock, we could actually like meter time, right? We could actually pay people by the hour, right? And we can do that because we invented clocks. So I actually really do hate clocks. I think clocks suck. I wish that we would get rid of them, but we'll never get rid of clocks. They're so built in. They're everywhere. Every device you have has a clock. Every device. Your oven has a clock. The computer has a clock. Your phone has a clock. Every device has a clock, and always will, and always will. And so I kind of wish we'd get away with get out of them, but do you want me to focus on something in regards to the sentient comment, Ward? Like to me, the sentience of the universe is kind of like skeptics always ask me, okay, well, what's the evidence of it? And I've come to say to them, like, okay, well, like, would you accept the evidence if it was waving its hand right in front of your face? That if we are created by the signature, by the quantum signature that exists, like, if we're created and maintained by that, and we are sentient, then the signature itself must be sentient to some degree, right? Like, if we are, it must be. It just seems self-apparent. And I'm yet to hear an argument besides just sort of throwing shade, being like, pfft. Like, that's basically the response I get most of the time. Pfft. I'm like, that's not an argument. That's not really a thing. All right, guys, 1 second. I'll be right back. Chair stream. Oh, all right. We're back. Time is only regarded by sentience. Oh yeah, I see where you're coming from with that, Ward. Where like a non-sentient creature doesn't really care about time, right? Like they just exist with the rising and the falling of the sun, and they don't really care to chart like their own passage and the sense of entropy and all of this. And a quick mess up his desk while he's not looking. Oh, well, you don't understand what's happening off camera here. I feel like you couldn't do a better job than I do of keeping my desk messy. So, although I'm pretty proud of myself, honestly. Like I've done worse. Would you consider non-intelligent life to be sentient? So this, Nick, this is what's really interesting about words like sentient or intelligence or non-intelligence or any of this kind of stuff. It is very wobbly. Like, what is or is not intelligence? What is or is not sentience, right? Like, we have and science has a real hard time pinning this stuff down, right? Has a really tough time being like, that's what it is. And it is a great song. It is a great song. So, what I consider, what I think matters, like a dog. For a dog is easy because we all interact with dogs, right? To some degree, like the energy that created and maintains that dog is the same energy that creates and maintains me, and there is something limiting. Like there's something. The dog is not on the same plane as I am, right? But it is here. It is alive. It is a life form. It has its own attitude and thoughts and principles and all that are baked in, that are what it is. And I just have kind of come to see that like we are of the same energy, and because we are of the same energy, we have an equality. There is an equality there. And a big reason I think why humans, like if you if you're watching a TV show and somebody kills a person, you just kind of like shrug and go like, yeah, that person died. But if they kill a dog, you're like, that person needs to die. Like that is a villain. That person is evil. And it's because animals are innocent. They don't have a prevailing, like they don't really understand what is good or what is evil. They're just existing. They're just here, and we know. And so to kill a dog just because is an expression of malice and anger towards the energy of the universe itself, right? It's a to put it in theological terms, it's a sin against God, right? Like killing a human, we're like, well, humans are generally pretty scummy, right? And because we have an understanding of good and evil, and like we're kind of scumbags, so you can always see a reason why a human should be killed. And so that doesn't seem to be as big a crime to us as killing an innocent animal, because there could be no possible reason outside of like if they're rabid or something. But like if it's just a dog chilling around and you kill it, yeah, go fuck yourself, right? That's a crime against the universe itself, and we know that's the truth. Like just inside of us, somehow instinctually, we understand that to be the truth. Yeah. And so, would I consider non-intelligent life to be sentient? I just don't know how to answer that question. But I suppose I'm saying I defer to assuming it's assuming the integrity of its life, that it is as valid as we are. Do you feel the same with insects? Insects, yes, it always comes down to this with insects. I used to be a beekeeper. And I'm constantly trying to figure out a way to become a beekeeper again. That since I've moved to the city, I can't find a place to put a hive. I can't really figure it out. But I'm always angling. And of course the pandemic happened and that fucked everything. But I'm always angling and trying to figure out how to become a beekeeper again. And I gotta tell you, having been a beekeeper and interacted with bees, yeah, I feel the same with insects. I think that insects... We try to, we give them a real biblical run where they're just like a demon that's just like, and they're just here to cause us problems. But you interact with a beehive for long enough and you begin to see, like, it's got its own personality, it's got its own way, it's got its own outlook. And the insects are talking to each other, they're communicating with each other, they have their own language, they have their own way of... We know that they can track the passage of time. We know that they can orient themselves with their surroundings, and we know they use the sun to orient themselves. So, wouldn't that be great, eh? Guitar playing beekeeper commie sounds like a good prime minister. It'd certainly be like... people would be like reading the history book and they'd be like, what the fuck happened? Like they'd just be like, what? Yeah, you can just start with pollinator nests. It's the trouble I'm having is just finding a location where people will accept it. Like I live in Toronto, right? Like and it seems as though the limited space that exists where people will accept the existence of a hive are already taken up. And so I would be really fortunate, I think. I'd really have to forge my own path in order to maintain something like this. And I'm always angling for it. My new weird personal habit I'm breaking is stop squashing insects unless I have to. Yeah. Which has led to some horrifying encounters with spiders. Yeah. I had a big, long conversation with a spider in here recently. There was a spider that was just sort of chilling up in the corner, and I don't mind that. Little spider living in, hey, name last, how you doing? Moved to Northern Ontario. Yeah, that'd be a way to do it, for sure. And believe me, I've been thinking about it. But the rent might be cheaper. Temiskaming Shores, lots of farms, always need beekeepers. Oh, yeah. And into Val d'Or. Oh, yeah. Always worth thinking about. I don't know if I'm in the mood to relocate. I've actually tracked how often I have moved in my life, and on average I'm moving once every 8 months. And I gotta tell you, pretty fucking sick of it. Pretty fucking sick of it. So, I would have to, like, someone would have to give me a really good deal. Someone would have to give me a really good deal to convince me to give this up, to give up what I've got going on right now. It would have to be like a very clear, like, sign the contracts. Like, I would need to be receiving something pretty hefty for me to want to move from this location. I'm tired of moving, dude. I'm so tired of it. Like, I would say that the last 5 moves I did completely unwillingly. I've been completely protesting the whole time, but I just they had to happen. They had to happen. So I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of moving. I'm sick of being constantly dislocated. I'm sick of it. So I'm digging my heels in, and they're gonna have to pull me out of here. If Ford wins another 4 years, would you move back to Manitoba? Considering they'll likely get an NDP majority in 2023. Yeah, I don't know, dude. I don't know. Good question. It does sort of depend on what happens with the rents. Like, the rents are absurd. The rents are absolutely absurd. And something does need to give. Like if Doug Ford keeps going along this way, and if we keep going along this way, we're looking at, like, thousands of people are going to be evicted. Like, thousands of people are going to be evicted and living on the streets. Like, there's just no avoiding it, right? If this is the system that we're going to live under, with absolutely no debt relief, with absolutely no rent relief, absolutely none of this kind of stuff. And it's going to get worse because the billionaires are buying up the housing, right? So they're just going to jack the rent right up. And they're going to start treating the doctors, lawyers, and engineers as renters, which is just a fucking disaster. An old bio professor had 3 big hives in his backyard. Good for him. I did an outdoor course with him and had to go get equipment from his house through the back, and that was traumatizing for me. Bees are your friends. Bees are your friends. No way Ford wins the next election. There is definitely a way Ford wins the next election. Do not forget who the electorate is. The electorate is Bob and Doug McKenzie. Oh, hey. Well, yeah, we're gonna have an election, eh? Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Let's see who we voting for. We got Steve Del Duca. Who's Steve Del Duca? Who's Steve Del? Oh, I don't know Steve Del. I think he was an old Wynn guy, eh? Old Wynn guy. Oh, Wynn. I don't like Wynn. She made my hydro go right up. I don't want to vote for a Wynn guy. No. Well, okay. Well, but Dougie's been doing good, eh? Dougie's been doing good, eh? Yeah, Dougie's been doing great. Dougie's been doing great, right? Like, he really helped our hydro, and he seems like a good old boy, don't you think? Well, what do we think of Andrea Horwath? Horwath. 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 Yeah, I don't know. She reminds me of, like, my kindergarten teacher, eh? Like, she's like, just like, she comes up there and she sounds like a school teacher. Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's your fucking electorate, guys. Like, yeah, Doug Ford can win. Yeah, somehow he still has an approval rating for 40%, around 35%. The electorate is just cringe. Well, and the one silver hope, right, is that people do not pay attention to politics. Like I pay attention to politics. I mean, for God's sakes, I do a live stream, so I pay attention to politics. And but the electorate does not. And I used to kind of get upset about that, but as I've grown older, I've come to see, like, no, it's very honestly done, and it's not out of stupidity or malice. It's just people have shit to do. That's the reason why we elect people to lead us, right? The reason why we're electing people to lead us is because that's a job and it should be done. and we've got shit to do. Like we live in a capitalist society. We've got shit to do, and the and so they don't pay attention until they have to, right? And then when they pay attention, and you could take a look at literally every single election that has happened in Canada for the last 40 years, maybe even longer than that, that you can have dramatic changes in the opinion of the electorate 4 weeks out from an election. Because that's when people actually pay attention. And when people start to pay attention, well, they start to actually read articles. They start to actually listen to other people. And also, the population begins to accept a certain degree of political conversation. You got to remember that, like, we are super disincentivized to talking about politics, especially in our workplaces. Like, I can't talk politics in the workplace. Like, if I go and work a retail job, I can't be talking politics. Not this way, right? I can't be talking politics in the workplace. Like, that gets kiboshed. That gets capped, right? But 4 weeks out from an election, even the most, like, hard, like, no, you can't talk about politics, like, there's a loosening. There's a loosening that definitely happens about 4 weeks out. And and because of this is what the hope is. And in fact, because of this sort of reasoning that I'm using here, it means that Doug Ford's drop in the polls before election season is a disaster for him. It's a disaster, right? Because that drop in the polls indicates that there's this segment of the population, right? So there's a section of the population that was willing to be favorable of Doug Ford that then dumped off. That means that he has soft support. That means that they can be convinced without even an argument, just the passage of time. and these people can drop down. Yeah, exactly. If social democracy is far left in Canada, I have no idea what they think of Bolivarian socialism. Well, they call it a dictatorship, is what they do. Is Finland under a far left authoritarian communist rule? No, so calm down, yeah. Yeah, did you see Rachel Notley getting called out for a pro-oil tweet today? Yeah. He's just thinking how liberals and conservatives think. Just like anything to the left of like minor, like if you start talking about nationalization, right? Even though nationalization makes all the sense in the world, right? Like if you start talking about nationalization, suddenly you're like a far right or a far left commie. And it's like, what? That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, that's what's frustrating about the political discourse in this country is like, you can't actually talk about rational solutions without being accused of political positioning, right? Like, to me, I look at nationalization and I'm just like, nationalization makes sense. Like, it's to me, it's not a political position. It literally just makes sense that the state control the functions that the public rely on. Like, especially if that state is democratic. Like, it just makes sense that your resource industries be nationalized. It makes sense. Like, you wouldn't privatize your military, but you'll privatize your oil sector. Like, what? How does that compute? How does that make sense? And the arguments that the capitalists are using are incoherent. They don't make sense. The idea that they're going to turn around and like reinvest in the society is like totally, like, it's completely falsifiable. It's total bullshit. Yep, 40 years of privatization proved itself to be abysmal failure. Yeah, and we're going to be spending a long time recovering from it, right? Like, it turns out giving small sections of the society vast economic power is a mistake, right? It's just completely odd, right? It's just completely odd. Oh, anyway, guys, I think I'm winding down. Ready for a weekend. I hope you guys have a good weekend planned for yourselves. I hope you're doing well out there. Hope you're enjoying yourself. I'm going to watch The Death of Stalin this weekend, so I might come out with a a review or a commentary on the death of Stalin. We'll see. We'll see how I feel about that. Hopefully I get out of this sort of depressive fugue state that I've been finding myself in. As always, guys, you are divine beings living in divine energy. And we could sure use some right now. Good luck. We're going to need it.